Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Sacramento County Board of Supervisors. Today's date is 12/21/2021, and this meeting is hereby called to order. I'm at this time going to ask our county clerk if she would please call the roll and establish quorum.
Good morning. Supervisor Desmond? Here. Kennedy? Here. Natoli?
Here.
And Frost.
Here.
And you have a quorum. This meeting of the Sacramento County Board of Supervisors is cablecast live on Metro Cable 14, the local government affairs channel, on the Comcast Consolidated Communications and AT&T Uverse cable systems. The meeting is closed captioned and is webcast at metro14live.saccounty.net. Today's meeting will be replayed Friday, December 24th at 6 p.m. on Channel 14.
And at this time, I'll ask our county executive if she would please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, good morning and happy holidays to everyone. I want to just give a shout out this morning to Ethan Dye and all of our county staff and regional transit, and for all those who opened warming centers and tried to find ways to help people during these cold, it's been so cold. And so it meant a lot that you all kept us up to date on all the work that you were doing, and we appreciate and don't want you to think it goes unnoticed. We appreciate all that you've done. And at this time, I'll go ahead and read our meeting announcement, and we'll get right down to our work. The Board of Supervisors encourages the public participation during the meeting in person, telephonically, and in writing, in compliance with the directives of the county, state, and Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. This meeting is broadcast live and open to in-person attendance. The county requires a face mask or face shield while inside the county's administration building, which includes the board chambers and hearing rooms, and recommends social distancing. Meeting procedures are subject to change based on the recommended public health and safety guidelines. Public comments will be taken in order of in-person comments and then comments by phone. If you're making a public comment in person, a face mask or shield is required, and social distancing is recommended while inside the chambers or hearing rooms 1 and 2. Seating is limited and available on a first-come, first-served basis inside the chambers, and overflow seating is available in hearing rooms 1 and 2. If there are no seats available in the chambers or overflow room, please form a line in the designated area and wait for your turn to make a public comment. Please complete a speaker request form and give it to the clerk staff. A separate speaker request form is required for each agenda item or topic that is not posted on the agenda. When I open the public comments, I will call 3 names at a time. When you hear your name, please start walking towards the podium inside the chambers and wait for your turn to make a comment. If you're making a public comment by phone, dial 916-875-2500 and follow the prompts to be placed in the queue for a specific agenda item or off-agenda matter. Please refer to the agenda and/or watch the meeting to follow along to determine when is the best time to call and be placed in the queue to make your public comment. You may be on hold for up to an extended period of time, and your patience is appreciated. I will ask the clerk to transfer calls into the meeting accordingly. Each agenda item queue will remain open until the public comment period is closed for that specific item. Members of the public will be given 2 minutes to make a comment and are limited to making 1 comment per agenda item or off-agenda matter. Please be mindful of the public comment procedures to avoid being interrupted or disconnected while making your comment. If you need an accommodation pursuant to Americans with Disabilities Act for medical or other reasons, please see our clerk staff for assistance or contact the clerk's office at 916-874-5451 or by email at boardclerk@saccounty.net. You may send written comments by email or by email to boardclerk@saccounty.net, or your comment will be routed to the board and filed into the record. Thank you in advance for your courtesy and understanding of our meeting procedures. And at this time, I'll ask our clerk to read her clerk's announcements.
Chairperson Frost, we do not have any announcements. We only have one consent matter today.
Thank you. Next item, please, then.
You would still need to vote on the resolution.
I'm sorry?
Item number 1, you would still need to vote to approve the resolution. Would you like me to read it into the record?
Yes, please.
Okay. Resolution congratulating Sacramento National Association for the Advancement of Colored People upon the occasion of its 105th anniversary.
Thank you. At this time, I'll ask our board for a motion for approval.
For the record, what was that number?
Yeah.
105?
Oh, okay.
I'm a little confused, I think.
It was number 1?
Yes, item number 1.
Yeah, no, I for some reason, I thought it was 150th, so.
No, it is the 105th. So
It is, okay.
105th. And we just got the information, I think, just yesterday, so we didn't have the draft yet completed. We will circulate that. But
Okay.
We did one for the 100th, and they're doing a 105th celebration next week. So we don't always do in 5-year increments, but nonetheless, still a milestone.
No, but
so.
they're definitely worth celebrating. They're extraordinary. So.
And we will get the record corrected and to
It is
reflect the
105.
150.
It's right.
It's 105?
No, it's 105.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
you're right. No, you're right. That's why
I was-
I think we're just a little confused.
I was wrong.
Not you.
No, it is 105th.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We can all come back
So
for the
the-
150th, but
The chair will go ahead and move that consent
second.
item.
Second it.
And we have a second by Supervisor Natoli.
Please vote.
Thank you.
Unanimous vote with Member Cerna absent.
Thank you. Next item, please.
Item number 2 is to introduce ordinance amending sections 22.05.035 and 22.2.60 of the Title 22, the Sacramento County Code related to Senate Bill 9 requirements to allow 2 primary dwellings on 1 parcel, to provide for ministerial processing of 2-lot tentative parcel maps, and to address expiration of map approvals. Waive full reading, continue to January 11, 2022 for adoption.
And before we go any further, I forgot to ask if there were comments, public comments for consent or not off agenda.
We do have 2 off-agenda comments in the queue.
I'm sorry, Mr. Pahuli, do you mind if we go ahead and do that? I think I'm already beginning my vacation. My mind's already gone on vacation. But I think it would be appropriate to take those off-agenda items first.
I'd like to move that Supervisor Natoli take over the rest of the meeting.
That's not nice. I'm almost there.
Please send the first caller. Hi, caller. Hello, caller. Please start your public comment. You have 2 minutes.
To be able to speak with the Board of Supervisors. I want to thank you for your service to our county and our communities, and I honor the availability of this time. My name is Debbie, and I am a real estate broker. I've been in Sacramento County for 31 years. And I just want to tell you what happened to me yesterday. I want to get it on the record as my testimony. I had a prescription to pick up at the pharmacy, and as I was wrapping up my transaction, I asked the pharmacist, for the information on the FDA-approved vaccines for Pfizer, Moderna, and Johnson & Johnson. And they handed me some Xerox copies. And I said, these are just copies off the internet. These aren't package inserts. And they said, there aren't any package inserts because these products are still emergency use authorization, and they are not FDA approved. So I was a little shook up by that because it was my understanding that we're going on the knowledge and truth that these are indeed FDA approved. If they are emergency use authorization, then they come under a whole different body of law. Federal law prohibits employers and others from requiring a vaccination that is being distributed under an EAU. And I really am standing in confusion because truth is very important to me. I believe that truth is a power greater than myself that can restore me to sanity. And if these are indeed...
You have 15 seconds.
Forcing people or mandating others to take a shot is in violation of the United States Constitution, the Nuremberg Code, and I believe that anyone that says that these are FDA approved and is lying about it need to be held accountable. That's my statement. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please send the next caller. Hi, caller. Hello, caller.
Yes.
Do you have the meeting playing in the background?
I am in the actual chambers, and I would like to request equal accommodation because I'm unable to wear a mask pursuant to Code 51 to make my comments in person.
Where is this person?
I'm right outside the doors.
They were in the hearing rooms. They were directed to the hearing rooms by security.
Yeah, that's what we do.
Okay.
I cannot wear a mask, but I want to have equal accommodation pursuant to California Code 51 to make my statements.
Okay. I'm not sure who this is.
My name is Brenda.
Okay,
Panda.
Brenda. Do we have a Zoom? I'm told by our legal counsel that we have a Zoom
No, I need
available.
to have equal accommodation. Zoom is
Okay.
not equal accommodation. I have something I need to share with you in person, and I want to.
Has this person
The accommodation is either the mask or a shield, or they can make their comment via telephone if they
Okay.
do not want to wear a mask.
I cannot do that. Is not equal accommodation.
Would you like to proceed with your comment, ma'am? We're in a position here where our legal counsel has advised us that we have made equal accommodations via phone or by Zoom.
This is not equal accommodation. Is being provided the equal. I would like to speak to you in person. I would like to. I have stuff I'd like to share with you in person, and being over Zoom, I can't share that. Plus, that's not right. It's not a law. Tell me the law that I'm breaking, coming in person without wearing a mask. It's not a law. It's a mandate. That's a suggestion.
I'm going to ask
I would like to speak to you in
our
person.
county counsel to advise.
Thank you. So it's my understanding that a protocol is in place that's consistent.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I
A
can't
protocol is in place that's consistent with the CDC and our health director's guidelines. We have offered accommodations, and the accommodation is to have people in the room on the side. Another option, if she would like to come in and she cannot mask, she can wear a shield. So.
I cannot wear a shield. I'm claustrophobic.
Okay. I'm not
Those
sure.
are the options that are available.
Those are not
Okay.
equal. I want equal opportunity.
Ma'am, at this point, I'm going to give you the opportunity to make your public comment, and my suggestion to you is that you reach out to our county clerk for special accommodations. That's one of the announcements that we read before our meeting. And the county clerk office should be able to work out some accommodations with you. Would you like to go ahead and proceed with your 2-minute comment?
Sure.
Thank you. You may begin.
I was going to show the actual death rate, which is actually the only meaningful measure of how dangerous COVID-19 is, and that was reported on the MSN coronavirus website. And it shows the death rate is very low and proves there's no relationship between confirmed cases and the death rate. I looked up the numbers on the dashboard for Sacramento, and the death chart states that they don't show age groups with less than 5 deaths. So I added up the cases from the 0 to 29 and divided the death total by 26. That's 0.04%. That just proves that coronavirus is not killing the children, and they're the ones that are being forced now to vaccinate. And the vaccines are extremely dangerous. I actually pulled up a site on WHO that had to do with, that's another thing I wanted to show you, that showed that they are not recording the flu numbers anymore. As of 2020 to now, 2021, the end of now. Now they're suddenly, so did COVID cure the flu? I also emailed all of you the vaccine death report that was published in September of 2021. There was a CDC whistleblower that stated at least 5 times more deaths in a sworn affidavit. Also, Attorney Thomas Renz received information from a whistleblower inside the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, which shows that 48,465 people died shortly after receiving their injection. He emphasized that these death numbers are less than 20% of the U.S. population. So if we apply that number to the entire number of the population, we see a death rate of almost 250,000.
You have 15 seconds.
There needs to be full disclosure of the adverse events of these vaccines, and they are not only not safe, they are dangerous. And I demand an evidentiary hearing where witnesses are sworn in and the evidence meets evidence code.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you.
And Chair, she can provide her written materials to the clerk staff, and they can be distributed to board members.
I believe we already did
we got the
receive
one
the
report,
vaccine
yeah.
report and a couple reports, which I want to thank those of you who are making your comments. We will definitely be following up and reading your submitted information and looking into this further. Did we have other callers?
Yes, ma'am, we do. We have 2 more off-agenda callers. Please transfer the next caller. Hi, caller. Hello, caller.
Yes.
Please start your public comment. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Marilyn. I'm a constituent. I'm in the overflow room. And I wanted to let you know that your equal accommodation sucks. When I entered this building, I was met with a security guard who decided to chest bump me and put his hands on me, and then tried to turn it around and tell me that I put my hands on him. Then once I walked through the door, that guard turned to the other guard and told him to lock the door. So now I have 2 intimidating guards standing outside the door looking at me. One is rubbing his hands together, all the same time looking very intimidating. So I'm having a hard time seeing how this is an equal accommodation. I am so pissed off. I came down here, I took my fucking time, and I'm paying you assholes to sit in those chairs while I'm paying parking to be here also, to come here and make a comment. I'm going to read to you what the CDC says about accommodations for people with disabilities. For people who cannot wear or safely wear a mask because of a disability as defined by the Americans with Disabilities Act, consider reasonable accommodation for workers who are not fully vaccinated, who are unable to wear a mask, or who have difficulty wearing certain types of masks because of a disability. So what is equal about what you're doing to me right now?
Thank you,
Caller.
ma'am.
Thank you. The caller hung up. Please send the last caller. Hello, caller.
Yes.
Please start your public comment. You have 2 minutes.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Betty Williams, president of the Greater Sacramento NAACP. And I just want to thank the County Board of Supervisors for the resolution that was presented earlier. And we are 105 years old, 105. And just on behalf of our branch, our officers, our membership, that's over 1,000, I would just like to thank you from the bottom of my heart for recognizing the oldest civil rights organization in Northern California and in the greater Sacramento area, because you didn't have to do it, and the fact that you did and recognized us, I am just so honored and proud, and I just needed to call in and share that with you and let you know that. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Betty.
Thanks, Betty.
And that concludes your off-agenda public comment.
Okay, and to those who spoke out this morning on public comment, I just want you to know that I'm doing some research on the matter of police power and how much police power does the public health officer have, and we definitely want to find a way to accommodate those who are not able to wear the mask. I'm trying to understand the law around that, but I want to encourage all of you to, I guess, try to, not be emotional and try to stay calm, and let's work through this in a peaceful and lawful way, because we definitely don't want someone to be, feel like they're, being singled out, and we want to hear your voice, and we want to see you. We're hoping we can work our way through this as quickly as possible. And I know we have a comment from Supervisor Natoli also.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. I would just ask, I know we've worked diligently to provide the accommodation. Obviously, there continues to be frustration by some who've attended today and not been admitted to the chambers because of what's been outlined as it relates to both mask and shield wearing. So as we come into the new year and not knowing exactly how things are going to be put forth as it relates to indoor meetings and masking and so forth, I guess I would just ask again for us, not just the clerk, but for our general services, take a look at how folks might be able to come into the chambers and it may not be to the podium, but there's some way, again, because there is this distance. I mean, again, they may be right next door, but we did have the Zoom accommodation previously, and I don't know, it sounds like that may still be available. People were not accessing that, but again, this has been a very long journey, and we're still, working our way through it. And again, I think obviously there's a number of factors here to be considered. So I guess I would just ask, and again, I appreciate Chair Frost again trying to work through this as our clerk and certainly other staff here. But to see if there's a way to actually folks can physically come into the chambers, say their words to us, and then if they aren't able to wear a mask or shield, then obviously not to remain here, but they certainly give the opportunity to be present in a way that we can see, see them, even if it's at a distance here in the chambers. But so I guess I would ask us continually, over the holiday, to take a look at that. We'll next come into session, obviously January 11th, but if there's some way to physically allow for that and still maintain obviously the safeguards that obviously are put in place now and certainly have been for a number of months. So I don't know, Ann, if there's anything you might want to respond to.
I want to
on
thank you, Supervisor Natoli. That was something that I had asked for a few months ago, and I don't understand why we can't make an equal accommodation, find a way to do it.
I can certainly have additional conversation with Dr. Kasiri. We are right now anyway under a statewide indoor mask mandate, and the important thing is that people are allowed to make a public comment. And because we have the phone capability, that does allow for public comment. But I will revisit that conversation with Dr. Kasiri. What we've implemented here is based upon public health guidance, but we'll certainly have that additional conversation.
Okay.
Yeah, and I appreciate public health's guidance. There are a lot of citizens who feel like they're not getting answers to the logic behind the regulatory environment that we've created here. And so maybe if we could give them answers, they would understand, so it's a frustration for me personally also. So I understand how they feel, and I appreciate your being open-minded about that, Supervisor Natoli. All right, are we done with our public comment then? Let's move on to the next item.
Item number 2 is introduction ordinance amending sections 22.05, .035, and 22.2.60 of the Title 22 of Sacramento County Code related to Senate Bill 9 requirements to allow primary dwellings on one parcel. I did already read the title, but just to...
And thank you for the clearer title. I know that between last Tuesday and this Tuesday, there was a clear title posted, and hopefully provided some additional information to folks if they're interested or following this topic. So thanks for that.
Okay. Good morning, Chair Frost, board members. Chris Pahuli with Planning and Environmental Review. I will be providing the staff presentation for this item, which is a package of county code amendments and development code modifications aimed at providing direction and guidance for the implementation of Senate Bill 9. In September, Governor Newsom signed SB 9, which has 2 operative provisions. The first is that it requires ministerial consideration of 2 primary units on one lot within single-family residential zones. And second, that property owners be allowed to split one lot into 2 lots ministerially. Both of these provisions are exempt from CEQA, have certain requirements that must be met, and become effective on January 1, 2022. Before I go further, I want to mention that staff has been tracking this legislation's requirements and participated in a webinar a couple of weeks ago with state HCD to better understand specific portions of the law. The package drafted for your consideration is based on staff's current understanding of statutory requirements. However, HCD noted that they are working on guidance for jurisdictions, but the guidance was not going to be issued until perhaps sometime during the first quarter of 2022. And since that guidance wasn't going to be issued in the near term, it was prudent to move forward given that the law goes into effect in January. In short, future updates to the county code and development code may be necessary once detailed guidance is provided by the state.
Excuse me, we have a couple of supervisors who wish to speak.
Okay.
Supervisor Desmond.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I want to echo Supervisor Natoli. Thanks, Chris, and I had a conversation with you and Leanne about changing the title. I know Supervisor Natoli did as well to make it clear for folks so they can understand what we're going to be discussing here today.
Absolutely.
Which has major implications for a lot of folks in unincorporated Sacramento County, most of whom are probably in my district, District 3. I'm curious, usually the state would not require us to proceed with something without providing that guidance. Was there any discussion about maybe delaying implementation of this until that guidance was forthcoming?
There was no discussion during the webinar and during discussions with HCD about delaying the implementation of these provisions. I think as as has happened with other legislation, notably the ADU legislation, many times the legislation goes into effect and additional guidance is provided after the legislation has gone into effect.
And in between, we're in kind of the unenviable position of having to implement something without that. And I think that's important for folks, members of the public, to understand why we're having this discussion today before the guidance comes out. And I'll have some additional questions as well as you go through your presentation. All right. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. Supervisor Natoli.
Yeah, I was going to comment very similar to what Supervisor Desmond just spoke to, is that, this isn't the first time, probably won't be the last time, but there's this urgency to address an issue legislatively. They take it, through their process. It's enacted in statute. It has a start date of January 1st, in this case of 2022, less than or 10 days away. And here we are. We are having to take up, ordinance considerations to how to administer this, because apparently on January 2nd, or 3rd, when we're open for business, folks can come in and begin to trigger this action. I don't think there's going to be a rush to the counters on January 3rd. On the other hand, absent guidance, and whether we concur or not with the guidance, to say, well, we'll have it in the first quarter, but the expectation for all the cities and counties in this state is that we're going to administer this beginning January the 1st. And I just think, again, it's objectionable in the sense that, whatever the, merits and or not are of the legislation, we're going to carry that out, being that that's what counties and cities do when we're told we need to do things. But I just, for them not to discuss that, and for us, maybe we reach out to our legislators, maybe this is going to be embraced by the people of this county, and certainly we'll do our job in administering it. But I don't think that's fair, and I'm not looking to you, Chris. I mean, it's not your decision, but, there's a issue here that relates to, significant changes in land use, codes and the way they're administered, and the way we would normally notice and reach out to folks. It's changing that landscape dramatically, because it's no longer noticed, at least under prescriptions in the law. It's directed that we will do this, and that we, the county, will approve. And there is no secret document. So the process has basically been not just shortcutted, but it's been compressed, but we don't have the guidance. Now, whether we would choose to use the guidance or not, or we're going to use our own judgment, we have a little bit of, I think, leeway here, as discussed in the staff report, and you're going to get to that in a moment. But again, I just find it very objectionable, because, again, it's kind of the way business is done in this state. And when it comes to a matter of land use and zoning that has a great deal of permanence to it, it certainly can have an impact relative to the housing needs in this county and so forth. And I think, as Supervisor Desmond said, significant portions of his district could potentially be affected. All of our 5 supervisors' districts could, but his in particular. Again, I don't find that acceptable. That, well, we'll get back to you sometime in the first quarter. It would seem to me it ought to be if it's a priority to pass the legislation, it ought to be a priority to give the guidance by the time we're required to enact this, or that it's going to be enacted whether we do anything or not, because basically it's going to be the law of the state come January 1st, whether we do anything with the ordinance or not. I don't know. I just find that very objectionable. And again, maybe it's more par for the course than I would want to acknowledge. But at any rate, enough comments on that, and we'll hear the report, and I guess we can talk about what we want to do with it. Thanks.
Thank you, Supervisor.
Okay. There are locational requirements and zoning criteria for projects to qualify for processing under SB 9. The first criteria is that properties must be located in a single-family residential zoning district. It's important to note that this requirement does not include all zoning districts that allow for single-family residential development, but rather zoning districts that are primarily for the development of single-family homes. As our zoning code contains descriptions for the various zoning districts, staff has concluded this provision most aligns with our RD1 through RD10 zoning districts. During the webinar with HCD that I mentioned, the approach of relying on our general plan, land use designations, and zoning code descriptions was mentioned as best practice, so staff believes this recommendation tracks with the intent of SB 9. As noted in the board package, these provisions also apply to properties located in special planning areas and neighborhood preservation areas that have a single-family residential underlying zone. And to the extent that projects come in those SPA or NPAs, staff will need to make a determination about whether or not they are eligible for processing under SB 9. In addition to properties being located on properties zoned for single-family residential, the property must also, I'm sorry.
It was a whisper. I do have a supervisor with a question. I just wasn't sure where to stop you. I'm sorry.
That's fine. We can stop there before I go into the next test.
Okay. Well,
Supervisor Desmond.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I apologize for breaking in, Chris. I just so I know we determined that RD1 through RD10 and our designations are not consistent with a lot of other jurisdictions, obviously, right?
Correct.
I'm just curious, our RD10, so was the criteria that you use zoning designations where we see primarily single-family housing, but a lot of RD10 areas, we see multifamily housing on those, on areas designated RD10. Isn't that correct?
We do. We see both higher density single-family product as well as duplexes. In fact, in our zoning code, it's mentioned that RD10 is primary designation for duplexes, and given that this bill also allows for two primary units, including duplexes, on single properties, that we believed that the RD10 district was also appropriate to include in this in these provisions.
And because the reason I asked the question is are we perhaps being over expansive in our interpretation of SB 9 by including all the way up to RD10?
Again, in evaluating our descriptions in the general plan and the compatibility matrix, we felt that we were tracking pretty closely with what we thought the intent of SB 9 was. Perhaps at the lower level, at the RD1, RD2, maybe that part might be a little bit more expansive, but at the RD10, at least
that was more consistent. Okay.
Review, we believe that to be consistent with the intent of SB 9.
And then, as along these same lines, was the league in the discussions with HCD? I imagine the League of Cities provided some guidance, some input about this, and interpretation on how this is going to be implemented by municipalities.
Yeah, we had been looking at direction from APA, the American Planning Association, the state APA. I have not personally looked at the league's guidance.
Okay, but what we've done is consistent with that guidance from APA, correct? I mean,
we believe, yes.
Again, fitting a round peg into a square hole or a square peg into a round hole at times because our designation, it's not consistent across the board. But
yes, we believe so.
Okay. And it just occurred to me because I'm going to be commenting later along some of the same lines of Supervisor Natoli, certainly. But I was thinking about the SPAs and the MPAs that communities work so hard to get in place to preserve some of the atmosphere and the qualities and the characteristics of their neighborhoods. And a lot of times those don't have RD10. They don't go up to RD10. I think they're probably RD5, really, for most of them, at least in my district.
And lower.
And lower, right, up to RD5. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thanks, Chris.
So as I mentioned, there's a two-part test. I spoke of the first test, which is that properties must be located on single-family residentially zoned district in a single-family residentially zoned district. The second test is that they must also be located in an urbanized area or urban cluster as defined by the U.S. Census Bureau. The map on this graphic is included in your agenda packet as attachment 1 and highlights eligible areas. I should note that the map is based on 2010 census data, and we are expecting a revised map in late 2022. However, for now, we will be using this map to determine eligible areas for SB 9 processing.
Yes, please, Supervisor Desmond.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry, Chris, I'll be interrupting you. Just to help me understand, urbanized area, I mean, it's funny, a lot of Fair Oaks, for instance, and then I think of Orangevale and Rio Linda and Alberta, and I'm sure certainly some communities in the south area. What is just the general definition of an urbanized area for purposes of, I think, public, edification here?
Yeah, that's a good question. I actually don't have a good answer for you off.
How about intuitively?
Off the cuff. Yeah, I'm assuming that it's a certain population density
in an area.
Within a identified geographic area that the U.S. Census Bureau designates.
I know a lot of these folks in some of these areas wouldn't consider themselves as living in an urbanized area, yet they're still included in these new provisions that we're implementing, or you're proposing us to implement. Okay, Thank you.
Thank you.
So once we've identified and determined that a request meets locational and zoning tests for SB 9 processing, there are some additional criteria for parcel maps or urban lot splits as they are called in the law. It's important to note that some of these criteria do not comport with our zoning code's development standards, so future updates may be needed to our zoning code. The proposed lots must be at least 1,200 square feet and roughly equal in size, so no more than a 60% to 40% split in the size post parcel map approval. SB 9 limits side and rear yard setbacks to 4 feet. However, we are able to use our zoning code's objective standards for front and corner setback requirements. There is a requirement that the applicant requesting a lot split sign an affidavit indicating they will reside in one of the properties for 3 years from the date of the approval of the tentative parcel map. SB 9 is silent as to the enforcement of this provision, but our presumption is that the enforcement would be handled as a civil matter between private parties. The law prohibits any dwelling unit created under SB 9 to be used as a short-term vacation rental. Therefore, parcel maps will be conditioned to prohibit rentals of less than 30 days. SB 9 does allow for a jurisdiction to require that each unit provide one off-street parking space, except for properties which are located within a half-mile walking distance of a high-quality transit corridor or major transit stop. As I mentioned earlier, these urban lot splits will be processed ministerially and are therefore exempt from CEQA. Finally, another key component of SB 9 is that it extends the initial life of tentative maps from 36 months to 48 months from the date of approval. So our proposed ordinance provides that flexibility for all tentative maps, not just SB 9 filed maps. I should note that at last week's board meeting, you introduced an ordinance amending county code for tentative map extensions. So these two amendments taken together provide additional flexibility for the development community. The board package includes an updated user guide, which outlines the processing of two-lot parcel maps filed under SB 9. I want to walk through how staff is anticipating requests be handled. And as I mentioned earlier, this approach could change based on direction from HCD. Staff is developing an SB 9 application for parcel maps, and we propose to charge a flat fee for the application, similar to the fee charged for parcel maps, tentative parcel maps, but removing the charges for noticing and CPAC meetings. Staff believes the fee approach is reasonable, given the maps are still subject to review and conditioning. Staff intends to utilize our project review committee to analyze the parcel maps, as is done for other ministerial entitlements. I wanted to note that per the draft user guide, applications would not be noticed to surrounding property owners or considered by the CPACs. This approach is consistent with other ministerial requests considered by planning, such as design reviews.
Excuse me,
Yes.
Supervisor Desmond.
Thanks. So just so I understand just some of the mechanics of this, and I'll finish off with I'll start with your last point you just made. So is there anything in SB 9 that would prevent at least a noticing provision to a CPAC?
No, there's nothing that would prohibit any noticing requirements.
Because I've heard from a lot of folks, a lot of my constituents, that they're very concerned that they won't even know about these things occurring. And so part of your plan, even though it's not required by the legislation, is that we kind of remove some of that community notice and involvement. I mean, even though they wouldn't have, I mean, they're already advisory to begin with.
Yeah.
And so that's something I would certainly want to discuss moving forward about if that's necessary, we should maybe include that. The other thing, just so on the lot split, I know you're going to be talking about the 2 dwelling unit provisions. So on the lot split, just for the mechanics of SB 9, and let me preface this with, I agree with Supervisor Natoli that, I mean, obviously we need more housing. We need innovative ways, creative ways to get more housing. We have a crisis. But I don't think, and I know that housing policy, land use policies in the state of California are rife with abuses and racist abuses over the history. But I don't think that single family zoning is inherently a racist thing. I think local land use planning is where land use planning should be, because there are so many unique characteristics of local populations and needs and services and desires, frankly. But with so I just want to preface it with that. But so with an RD10, if someone has a 1 acre parcel that's RD10, they could apply for a lot split that would bring that density to 20 units in that acre under these provisions?
No.
Okay, explain that to me, because I know that's an oversimplistic interpretation. So if I'm a property owner and I have just a 1 acre parcel, it's RD10, and I want to do a lot split, and SB 9 says I can, it looks like I could double the density there. It's not that simple, correct?
It's not that simple. You would have to sign an affidavit indicating that you were going to live on one of the properties for a 3-year period. And so under that scenario, again, I would assume that they would be building at the most 4 homes on each lot. 2 homes on each lot, so 4 homes total. Would be the way that they would handle it under an SB 9 lot split. In that case, if it was a 1 acre site that was zoned RD10, they could build 10 units on that one lot. So I'm not sure.
But I could do that anyway under pre-SB 9. I'm saying, how does that dynamic change under SB 9? I can increase the density just by ensuring that I live in one of those homes that are built, correct?
You would have to live in one of the homes that was built, correct?
So to get back to my previous question, though, then as long as I live in one of the homes, I could increase the density beyond the designation, whether it's RD5 or whatever it is. Is that correct? I'm just kind of come up with some hypotheticals here that folks are really concerned about.
Sure. I'm tracking. It seems that one of the lots may be able to be built at that RD10 density, but then the other lot that would be created would have to have a home that would be lived in by the property owner splitting the lot.
Okay, so the doubling would only apply to that specific, to add one additional.
I mean, presumably, if they were going to build out at the allowed density, but live in one of those units that was created, perhaps that could be something that we might need to kind of dig into a little bit more.
I know I'm a little slow on the uptake with some of these things, Chris. I just want to make sure we're talking about some of the unintended consequences and something that you and I have talked a lot about neighborhoods, specifically in my district, and concerns me how we may see some really increased densities right in the middle of a neighborhood, whereas our local planning efforts have always been around, larger transportation corridors that make more sense. I also get very concerned about the level of services, and I know that there are some exemptions for some of the transportation requirements. I mean, I just get really concerned about how are some of these neighborhoods on the interior going to handle what could be a pretty dramatic increase in traffic, increase in just things like trash pickup affecting the neighborhoods on roadways that were never designed for this level of density. And these are just some of the things that certainly concern me and my constituents. So I think I understand how you're explaining this. I appreciate it.
Actually, as I'm thinking it through a little bit more too, just to maybe point out that if they weren't doing a resultant project that was consistent with SB 9. So if they were going to do multifamily on these created lots, they would have to adhere to the multifamily development standards, which they probably wouldn't be able to meet by doing that lot split. So that could be another maybe protection against that occurring.
Okay, thank you.
I should point out one of the items that I was going to bring up. You had mentioned the noticing requirements that we are proposing, or the no noticing of the projects for the urban lot splits to the surrounding property owners, and no noticing to the CPACs, which again I mentioned is consistent with how we handle non-discretionary design reviews, for example, which is a ministerial action. An alternative, should the board want to consider, would be an approach tracking with our short-term rental permits, which, as you may know, do get noticed to property owners within 300 feet of the subject site post-approval. And so that is another ministerial action that should the board wish to direct staff to kind of track, that is something that could be considered.
I appreciate that, and I think that's important, the tracking. I also think, I know a CPAC can't inject delay into the process because it's ministerial, but I do think there's also value in CPACs knowing about these, local residents knowing about these where they're occurring. I just as a matter of just local government and civic engagement, I think that's important, and that's certainly something I would maybe hope we would consider as a board. So I thank you, Chris.
Okay.
Excuse me, Chris, Supervisor Natoli.
Sorry, Chris, because since you're on the point, I would just say with the last point, I can concur wholeheartedly that ministerial or not, that notice to folks, because as you have on the chart up here, it's a planning director's decision, much different than parcel maps have been in the past. Those have never been discretion to the planning director. This is much different than design review. This is creating additional lots with additional dwellings and as I said, any benefits and or issues that accrue go with that. And you talk about an appeals process here on the slide that, but there's no CEQA document, so there's no consideration regarding any impacts on the lot as it relates. I trust the planning director to look at it, but if there were trees, their ordinance relate to trees, the parking is no longer a consideration. And I just, at a minimum, letting folks know, obviously that appeal process, if it's ministerial, there's very little, if any, latitude. So you don't want to give people a false impression. On the other hand, this is new. We're being asked to administer it, and I think that, if nothing else, out of the approach that we've, I think, taken historically in this county, certainly not to be obstructionist, but also to let folks know of land use decisions. And this is the creation of new parcels. And when you talk about a parcel, again, it may be the exaggerated instance, but it's allowed for here, that you could have a 2,400 square foot parcel could be split to a 1,200 square foot parcel. Most single family houses 1,200 square foot by average. I mean, there are, many that are bigger and some that are smaller. That's the entire size of a lot. And you're talking about, in the urban setting, but in large part, these are suburban neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. And so it will be a change. It'll be a significant change over time. And, done right, obviously, I think probably we'll find acceptance in a lot of quarters, but but not telling people and just letting the process go. Appeals, if people wanted to choose that route, periods will pass because they're fairly definitive and they're, on a short time frame, 10 or 15 days once the decision is rendered. I just think letting folks know, and, it may be just there's only a handful of these over the next few years, but I think it's hard to predict, and particularly in this housing market and all the things we talk about here on a regular basis that are driving some of this legislative approach. But I would say from the get-go that, a premise here needs to be that we will send a courtesy notice, if you want to call it that, to the CPAC, and that we would notice adjacent neighbors, whether we use the 500 foot radius or some other prospect as we process this application. I just think that's key to, again, to our responsibility to carry out state law. So I would just leave it with that for right now. But again, I know we're interrupting you, but I think it was a key point up here, and I think that it ties back to people's right to exercise their right to appeal, whether they have a basis for doing that or not. So thanks.
I just want to also make sure I understand correctly as relates to the rural communities. This does not apply to ag-res.
That's correct. It does not apply to ag-res nor the areas that are not in a urban cluster or
so an area like
urbanized
Orangevale, where they cherish those 2-acre lots, that's not going to completely change the face of their community because of this.
That's correct. The Orangevale is included as an urbanized area. However, the ag-res parcels in Orangevale would not be subject to this, the SB9 processing provisions.
And I want to concur with Supervisor Desmond and Natoli with supporting a public process through the CPACs. Thank you.
Okay, so the last point that I was going to make on this slide is that, as Supervisor Natoli mentioned, the decision body for these items will be the planning director with appeals considered by the Planning Commission doing business as the Board of Zoning Appeals. Regarding requests to construct 2 primary units on one parcel, attached or detached dwelling unit requests will be processed consistent with recently approved accessory dwelling unit development standard requirements. This recommendation is based on ease of implementation and a determination that SB 9 appears to generally follow enacted ADU legislation. Because SB 9 does not include a provision detailing the maximum size of the 2 dwellings and instead states requirements cannot preclude a unit from being at least 800 square feet, staff intends to use the zoning code provisions that allow for a second primary unit of 800 square feet to 1,000 square feet, depending on bedroom count, with an option to apply for a discretionary permit to exceed the maximum size standards up to 1,200 square feet. By using these standards, it will result in size limits being applied to one of the 2 units created under SB 9. This item did not come up directly in the webinar with HCD. However, staff does believe this area will be addressed with HCD guidance. As the board is aware, staff is working on a comprehensive zoning code package to update use and development standards related to 2019 housing legislation. Staff is also intending to update the package with any new requirements stemming from this SB 9 package. Therefore, staff is seeking board direction today as to more lenient size standards for that second primary dwelling.
Excuse me, Supervisor Natoli.
So, Chris, and I know it was touched on in the staff report, but we have a number of special planning areas and neighborhood preservation areas in this county, and some of the intent of this legislation obviously goes to what's the heart of those ordinances that were vetted in public hearing processes, have long been established in county zoning regulations, have been administered by the planning department, and been purview of this board. What does it do to those, and I think you outlined that there's probably a dozen or so that you've identified. This basically usurps any of the provisions that relate to things that are addressed in SB 9. But I guess I'd like to know how you're going to administer that, because again, talking about notice to folks, and having been on the board the years I have, we've had some pretty vocal and lively discussions in these chambers regarding proposals in some of those neighborhood preservation areas and special planning areas. And I guess I'm curious as from the planning department's take on where we're headed with regards to.
Yeah. We are going to need to do a little more work as it relates to SPAs and NPAs. The general direction is, as you mentioned, this law does take precedence over our zoning code and special planning area ordinances and NPA ordinances. However, we are able to have objective zoning standards for areas and for the county, as long as they do not conflict with the requirements in SB 9. So as I mentioned, there are minimum lot size requirements in SB 9. There are minimum setback requirements in SB 9 for side and rear yard setbacks. So we are going to need to evaluate proposals that come in that are in SPAs and NPAs and have to make a decision about whether or not a request is able to be processed under SB 9, as long as they're not conflicting with these SB 9 provisions. We will be able to perhaps apply some of the development standards in our SPAs and NPAs, again, provided they don't conflict with the SB 9 requirements.
Well, one that's apparent, and you just touched on it, is certainly the setback requirements. And in some of the SPAs, the setbacks were designed actually to, provide some separation between uses that might be of a higher intensity. You might be up against an industrial zone, up against a commercial zone, and it might have been existing at the time. And so the recognition was that you need to have a deeper rear yard setback to separate from some potential incompatible activities or uses. If I read this correctly and understand what you just presented, that if a lot split could be configured in such a way that they could put a dwelling within 4 foot of the rear property line, as well as the side property lines. And similarly, in some of the neighborhood preservation areas, in large part in Supervisor Desmond's district, or District 3, there were front yard setbacks that were 35 feet. You had some side yard setbacks that were 15, 20, 25 feet because of the larger lots and so forth. And if I read this and interpret this correctly, that erases those provisions. This erases it. And if we adopt this, it's in state law, then we basically are, I guess, giving our green light to it. I don't want to say we bless it, because we may or not, but and that's problematic, because again, I think people have constructed and designed the outline of the lots on which they reside in such a way that there are those separators, and they're embedded some probably 30 or 40 years in county ordinance, and just basically. Am I being accurate about it? It erases those provisions?
Yes, that is correct.
And there's no ability to, maybe I turn to June for a moment here, Council. So there's no ability for us to have any additional flexibility in how we consider those things as it relates to particularly the setbacks, June?
Well, as to the setbacks, we do have to follow the state law requirement, the SB 9 requirements, but we do have discretion to use and apply objective standards. And so in looking at that, the planning department will look at the objective design review standards and the other objective standards that are in place and see if the project, the proposed project, would be consistent with those. And if it's not, then that may be a basis to deny the project.
And I know there are even provisions, I think there are in some of those MPAs that you know, distance from property lines, but also stipulations that you wouldn't have two-story units and or additions to buildings within certain envelopes on the lots and so forth. And this is silent. So anything in the single-family zones that you've defined would allow 2 stories, 4 foot from the property line, both rear and side yards. And it doesn't speak to the front yard. What are the front yard setbacks? 10 foot minimum?
As I mentioned, we would be able to use our front yard setbacks from our zoning code or for any neighborhood preservation area because it is silent in SB 9 as to a minimum front yard setback. Okay, so that portion of an MPA or SPA, if it called for a 25-foot, a setback, 20 used to be the standard. We come down to 10 and even encroach into that. We get within 6 feet or 4 feet in some cases, I think, with some of the punch outs on some of the houses and so forth. That it would still preserve that. So in the neighborhoods where you have this deep setback from the street, that is the one that we can hold to, and this doesn't change. The law didn't change it, and so we're not changing that, but it certainly affects the side and rear yard setbacks. That's correct.
Okay. All right. That's all I have right now. Thanks.
Thank you, Supervisor Natoli. Supervisor Desmond.
Cass, a couple follow-up questions. With respect to, and I don't know, Chris or June, I mean, some of our setbacks in some of these areas are also kind of a practical reason for it because of the rights-of-way in some of these areas. I mean, some places the right-of-way for the sewer line is in the backyard. I mean, SB 9 wouldn't prevent us from still applying a setback that is required to maintain our right-of-way. Is that correct?
I believe so. SB 9 does allow for provisions regarding easements in public facilities, and so if there was a required setback from a public facility, I believe we could apply that.
And then, thank you. And then, with respect to the specific example that Supervisor Natoli mentioned, some of these SPAs or NPAs that have limitations on 2 stories. My interpretation of SB 9 is that there are still elements of a NPA that we could apply as long as it does not conflict with SB 9. But so, for instance, that specific provision, could we still apply that as a limitation in an NPA that precludes it?
The height requirement, correct?
Okay,
yes,
great,
there are no
great.
restrictions.
Okay, I just want to confirm that because, oh boy, yeah.
Objective zoning standards, subdivision standards, and design standards can still be applied to SB 9.
Okay, great.
And then also you asked earlier about the number of dwellings that can be placed on a parcel. SB 9 does put a limit, and it's limited to no more than 2 residential units. So if someone on an RD10 wanted to do more than that, that would not be an SB 9 application.
Great.
They would need to apply in a different manner.
They would have to get
follow
a map.
our traditional.
Say RD10, they'd have to have a map with 10 units or for 10 parcels. And then if someone wanted to apply SB 9, they'd have to own one of those parcels, live on it, and then do a lot split over that parcel, right? I mean, that's kind of how it would play out. Okay.
Right. It's for proposed
Great.
housing developments containing no more than 2 residential units within the residential.
Thank you,
family
June.
zone.
That's
You're
because that
welcome.
was some of the panic. Oh my God, it is just automatically going to potentially double the density even up to RD10 or an RD5. You could put now 10 units on an RD5 acre.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Natoli.
Yeah, just while we're on that point, so let me be clear in my understanding that the objective zoning standards, but in the MPA, in some of the MPAs, there are provisions that would otherwise be allowed by the development code for 2 stories, but there are provisions that either call for a deep access if you're going to have 2 stories, and we're now saying a deeper setback, and that those setbacks no longer apply. So what then restricts the second story that would go in that setback that could be as close as 4 feet? Is there where is it that we get that authority that says that it says you can put a dwelling unit in there, and 2 stories is allowed under building code, but it's not provided for by the MPA. I want to be
Well, again, if the NPA has a height restriction of one that requires only a 1-story structure, that height requirement would be able to be carried forward in processing requests because SB 9 does not specify a height requirement.
Right. Okay. But I get that. But right now the height requirement is tied to a setback, and it says that you can have 2 stories, but you have to be 25 foot off the property line. Just use that for an example.
Sure.
Now the 25 foot goes away. You still may have a limitation, but basically you've shrunk the 25 foot to 4 foot. And so where is it that you can hold the line on the second story?
I understand.
Yeah.
In some of the NPAs that I've seen, there is a stepped
Yes.
height requirement based on setback. I think we would need to evaluate that request. It would be likely that we would impose the more stringent height requirement within that area. That could be a way of approaching it. And in areas where there isn't a stepped requirement and it's just a 2-story or 25-foot height requirement, then they would, as you mentioned, be able to put that structure within 4 feet of the...
Okay, because I want to be clear, because I think that Supervisor Desmond came away with a little different impression of that. And again, I'm not trying to think about all the situations, but I can almost rest assured that if that comes up and there's folks that are concerned about it, that there's going to be calls to the board and certainly the planning department, and we ought to at least have thought it through, and the explanation may be what you've just outlined, and I trust that. But I also wanted to ask, though, and this was key as you were explaining about the lot splits, that if you have a single-family lot that has a home on it, and it's able to be divided under the prescriptions that are outlined here, that we already allow ADUs, so you could have, but there's no existing unit, just the one primary dwelling. So once it was split, you could then, assuming you can meet the setback requirements, which are pretty minimal here, and any other requirements, you could put the ADU on the lot from which the newly created lot was divided. Plus, in the new lot, you could put a primary dwelling and an ADU. So you could go from 1 to 4. You could quadruple.
Correct. That's correct.
I mean, you could double it now because, again, assuming you can meet it, the setbacks, you could put the ADU. So in essence, in any of the single-family zones, you could go from 1 to 4 with ministerial action.
That's absolutely correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, in order to implement this new law in a couple of weeks, staff is working to update all of the required materials. We have looked at existing projects to determine if any of them are eligible to transition to this entitlement approach. At this point in time, we're thinking that there may be 1 or 2 projects in pipeline that may be able to transition. We have placed information on planning's website and fielded a number of inquiries from the public asking about these proposed requirements. Staff are updating applications and developing forms so that we can be prepared to take in requests at the beginning of the year. Over the past couple of weeks, we have notified the CPACs and planning commissioners about today's hearing and provided them with the report package and materials. Staff will be providing presentations on these requirements at all of the CPAC meetings beginning in January. We will also conduct an informational session with the Planning Commission in early January. Lastly, as I noted, we are working on that comprehensive zoning code package, and so it's likely that we may need to roll in some of the new requirements into that package. So this final slide contains the recommended actions from staff. We're recommending that you introduce the ordinance, waive full reading, and continue to January 11th. And then if there's any further direction for staff to receive that direction and incorporate that into these upcoming packages.
Supervisor Natoli.
So a question I posed to Chris and to June, and it may be self-evident, but so if we did not take action to approve this, we basically didn't endorse it, it doesn't negate the state law, what's the outcome or fallout that occurs from that? Obviously, we lose some of the control, but what is it that we would have to do, or what would we do if this board didn't endorse it?
I think the real issue, there is very limited material as you're hearing from me during the presentation that's actually before the board for action. There are some slight adjustments to county code. One of the provisions that I mentioned that is in that county code package is providing an additional benefit, if you will, to land developers and the development community to extend the initial life of tentative maps from 3 years to 4 years. And so if you weren't to adopt this package, that would be something that would not be provided for. But if the board were not to approve the package, we would still need to be in a position to receive and process applications beginning in January. And so we would have to comply with that law and those requirements and process applications.
So, but the extension of maps, that's an action that could be separate and apart. I mean, we could take that. I mean, I saw that that's obviously embedded in the resolution. So from practical standpoint, that whether we adopt this or not, you're going to process them. But you have a whole package of things that includes the fees, including the definition that you've provided relative to, some of the aspects of how we would, oversee this as it relates to square footage and such. But if we didn't, then the square footage would just be whatever they asked for, as long as they could fit it on the lot and meet the setbacks. Is that essentially, if we didn't adopt this and apply the provisions we are being recommended by the planning department to adopt, since there's no maximum on the square footage, they would allow the house to be as large as.
Yeah, no, at this point in time, we are proposing to use the ADU.
No, you are, but I'm saying if we
Correct.
did not adopt this,
correct.
Your recommendation, then the state law is the fallback, and that provides for what?
We believe that it provides for what we're proposing to you, or what we are informing you of, is the ADU requirements. And so
it does.
The package, right, that's what.
But I thought there was no maximum square footage. I thought you said there was no maximum in the law.
That's correct. There's no maximum in the law. And so what we believe we are able to do is to process consistent with our ADU development standards. And so that's what we would do. And that the recommendation before you is to consider whether or not we want to adjust within our future zoning code package to allow for a larger standard.
Okay, but January 1, if somebody came in to make the application and this board didn't take the action that's being recommended here today, you would then, how would you process relative to the square footage? You use the ADU? That's how the plan. Okay, that's how the planning department. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Supervisor Desmond.
Thanks. And just on that last point Supervisor Antoli was talking about, so you're asking for direction on the square footage limits for a second unit. So for an ADU, to make those limits much larger on the high end. I mean, I have no issue with changing it from 850 to 800 on the low end, but I guess I don't understand why you're asking for, or that you need that direction with respect to an ADU.
Well, currently our code prohibits ADUs of larger than 1,000 square feet, right, unless they apply for a special development permit. And so again, that's what we're going to be moving forward with now. As I mentioned, we do have a code package that we're working on that if the board wanted it to be 1,200 square feet by right, which I know there's been some discussion about, even with the ADUs, of moving to a 1,200 square foot by right, as opposed to requiring the special development permit. That is something that we could roll into that package.
Okay, but again, that's not addressed in SB 9.
It is not.
So
It is not.
the scenario that Supervisor Natoli kind of laid out, which I think is an entirely realistic one in certain areas. I'm not kind of worried, the sky is falling that we're going to see just thousands of these applications overnight. But I think in that very realistic scenario where you have one parcel, one house on one lot, and they take advantage of SB 9 to split that, put two houses on that one lot, and then they each have an ADU. Well, now you could not only have potentially 4 dwelling units on the lot, but if we change the maximum size of the ADU, they could all be very large units on that one lot, correct? If we make that change to the ADU standard.
They could be up to 1,200 square feet, correct?
I can make a comment. I was probably the one who brought that up. I know that there are standard sizes for manufactured homes, and so they have standard design and sizes whereby if someone was able to, easily get that approved,
use that product,
it could increase affordability. I think that was the inspiration behind that. It was more, we're working with site built, but also if someone wanted to do manufactured, they could get a standard model rather than having to pay extra for special design for a 200 more or less square feet, basically. That was the...
And that 1,200, I understand that, but you're not asking for guidance to perhaps go above that for the ADU.
Not requesting that
Okay.
at this point. I should say
I understand that,
depending
Supervisor
on-
Frost. Thank you. Yeah.
Should say that depending on HCD's guidance, they may indicate
Sure,
that we
that may
cannot
change
put a
things.
cap. Right, they may indicate that, but we haven't heard that at this point.
Okay, and a couple other points. As far as your outreach, Chris, and I appreciate you explaining. You and I think maybe Leanne and I had talked about, whatever action we take today, if we take action, because if we don't take action, you're still going to be administering these applications consistent with SB 9, which is essentially what you've laid out here. You've laid out a way forward that you believe is consistent with SB 9. So I imagine you would be implementing those or approving those applications consistent with what you're proposing here today, either way. But in terms of some of the, and like you said, after we get HCD guidance, and maybe after you hear from the CPACs and other public comment, we can make some adjustments, obviously, if it's consistent with SB 9. In terms of the outreach, I would also see some value in how many SPAs and NPAs did you say there are that are going to be affected by this?
Well, they will all be affected by it.
And how many are there total?
I believe there's 70 some odd.
Okay. I'm just thinking of some other outreach efforts where I know that's very time consuming and onerous to reach out to more individuals and organizations that are affected by it. But that's what I'm thinking about. I mean, because this is potentially a pretty dramatic change, obviously, in these areas with NPAs and SPAs specifically, because they have demonstrated they have a lot more investment and interest in these kinds of decisions that we're making here today. So I'd like to maybe consider some additional outreach beyond just the CPACs. So I'd like to hear what you might, what you and Lan might come up with to increase that level of outreach so we ensure we kind of have maximum penetration in the public about what might be affecting them. And then in terms of that, thank you, Supervisor Natoli, for helping flesh that out a little bit with the 2-story. That is something that's very concerning to folks. So now in an NPA, they may have prohibitions on 2-story. Well, it may not address the kind of situation we're facing here because they were assuming the setbacks were a certain distance. And so now setbacks going down to 4 feet. They would say, boy, if we had known that, we would have certainly beefed up our prohibition on 2-story houses, right? Yeah, that's concerning because I could see how an NPA could be amended to maybe address this, but that's certainly that's a time-consuming process as well, right? Yeah, I'd like to think about that. How we could address that situation, which I could certainly see happening.
And honestly, even if the NPA even if we attempted to amend it, we could not do it in a way that would usurp the authority that's already been set forth in SB 9. And all of our design standards and things of that nature have to remain objective. If they're not objective, then we run into other problems with legal defensibility.
Okay. Thank you, June.
Thank you, Supervisor Desmond. Supervisor Natoli.
So another question comes to mind is that in the bullet points here, and it was outlined in SB 9, the owner requesting a lot split must sign an affidavit indicating they will reside in one of the properties for 3 years. So what's the enforceability? So what if they don't? Who does what? Is parcel split reversed? Do you have to take the house down? I don't think any of those things are practical. But so, it's like, kind of like you throw that into the law, but so what? We've dealt with this many occasions on local zoning ordinances. And so what's the force and effect of that? Is there a document that says that in good faith, and I trust people will, again, I'm not questioning that people will come in good faith, but we've seen other situations where it becomes a situation where we got rental houses, we get income streams, and, we get a better offer. And we know that the local government is weak in its ability to enforce, not because they wouldn't, but what's the teeth? So tell me what's prescribed here and what do we propose to do? So you sign an affidavit. Is it worth the paper it's written on?
Can I defer this to?
Yeah, sorry, June. I'm curious.
So the legislation is silent.
Sure.
About the enforcement mechanisms. And we are hoping that the HCD guidance will give us some guidance on that. In the meantime, if the affidavit were signed, there could be a nuisance action filed by one property owner against another. That's a civil action, a potential for that. Possibly a code violation, zoning or county code, potentially. I mean, I can't say that with certainty, but that's something that could be explored. Yeah. But that would probably be the extent of it.
Right. So basically unenforceable. You're going to depend upon the goodwill and the good faith of the parties that seek to do this, and I trust that will be the case in many cases. But last question I have then relative to the exempt CEQA status. So it's the intent that you will issue the exempt document, they pay for that, or they just don't even have to go through any clearing whatsoever? Because we have a process right now that allows the Planning and Environmental Review Department to make a determination after doing some initial review of what's being proposed to certify the exemption. And it's a pretty low-cost document, but it accompanies the request. In this case, CEQA is waived entirely, so there is not even any consideration of that. You just issue the document, or you don't even issue a document. It's just presumed to be exempt, so...
The legislation says CEQA does not apply.
Okay.
Period.
So they don't have to check any box or anything else. It's just basically you make your application, no environmental review on any issue that may come up that could be otherwise a part of a CEQA review. As I mentioned earlier, trees or there may be some other issues related to MPA or SPAs. All that basically is foregone. And as long as they can meet development standards and other, we have a tree preservation ordinance.
Right.
On single-family lots.
So again, there's no environmental review under CEQA, but there is a requirement that we can enforce our objective zoning standards and subdivision standards and design standards. So hopefully the things that you're concerned about would fall within those categories, and we will be able to address the concerns in that way.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. That's all the questions.
Thank you, Supervisor Natoli. We do have some public comment on this item by phone. I believe we have 2 callers so far.
Hi, caller. Hello, caller.
Yes,
Please start your public comment. You have 2 minutes.
Okay, is this just recorded because it doesn't look like they're open for public comments right now?
It could be that the video you're watching is delayed.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So my name is Martha Dickinson, and I live in an area which is an NPA in Fair Oaks. And I really want to thank the supervisors for voicing a lot of our concerns. One of my main concerns is that obviously we have no voice anymore, is what it appears. I understand that there might be objective standards that are applied when the decision is made ministerially. And I would like to know if there is a way, I think Supervisor Desmond brought this up, to modify our NPAs to include more objective standards that could be addressed rather than using just some of the subjective standards that currently exist in the NPA. And also in general, I really don't think the people who created this law thought down the road about what this really means to all the communities involved who now apparently, again, don't consider ourselves urban areas, but now all of a sudden we are being thrown into living in a city, which is not at all what we're interested in doing. One other note is that our streets are not built currently. We have no sidewalks, gutters. We have narrow streets. We voted over and over to maintain that. And I would hate to see what would happen when we have the potential of having such a huge increase in density. I've got to hope that most people just don't do this. But I'm sure there are some developers that would be quite interested in it. And I think that's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And that concludes your public comment.
Okay, thank you. So any increasing in square footage for ADUs would come later down the road, basically, but you will move forward with that, with the idea of maybe finding out what this, if there's changes in the standard sizes, and just to make sure that we're making it easy for all parties. And also Supervisor Desmond had a question.
Okay.
And thank you, Chair Frost. Yeah, and I on the ADU issue, that makes sense. What changing the limit, lowering it to 800 and upping it to 1,200. That's I don't have an issue with that. It's funny to me. I completely agree with the intent of SB 9 to find ways to get more housing, which we desperately need. But it seems to me there are a lot of areas where I would love for the state to come in and provide a more consistent framework for certain things. But I think local land use planning is not one of those areas. I mean, I think this is the discussion we're having today illustrates the problem with the state doing that. And I think I really want members of the public to understand this is a state law, and we are, by and large, our hands are tied. We have to implement this, implement it in a way that's consistent with the law, and we'll do what we can to ensure that some of these, I think, sensitivities, characteristics of neighborhoods, some of these specific ordinances, objective standards, we still adhere to those. I do want to, talk about the caller made the point, and June and you and I had a brief exchange about, if a community wants to go down the path of amending an NPA from kind of more design review, from a design review perspective, not specifically to kind of thwart the intent or objective of SB 9. We have to be sensitive to that, and maybe ways they can do that. That still allows more, and allows these urban lot splits that are consistent with SB 9, but tries to impose some design review standards that are consistent with the neighborhood. And I'd certainly like to continue having that discussion. I understand the position you're in. I think that it's better that we affirmatively make a decision on how to proceed. I guess, today, knowing that we can change things. But I certainly would want to include a provision where the CPACs are noticed about any of these changes that are an SB 9 lot split. So those are my comments for now.
Thank you, Supervisor Desmond. Supervisor Natoli.
2 points. Obviously, this is a foregone when it comes to application of the law. But I want to, just on one of the points made by Supervisor Desmond, as it relates to the MPAs and SPAs, those all were, for the most part, may have had a very organic formation in that they came from neighborhoods or communities that had an interest. But they went through CEQA processes, they went through public hearings, and if we're going to entertain, I'm supportive of doing that, then it ought to be county initiated. I don't think that we should say to neighborhood X, well, we can, consider amendments that would be more objective standards, but that's going to be a fee of X amount of thousands of dollars, and it's going to require a CEQA document. I think we need to get some thought to that, because if we're going to bring this into the fold, because it's the law, and we already have zoning ordinances which are essentially land use law in this county, then if we're going to work with neighborhoods to comport our SPAs and MPAs to meet the intent of the law, then I believe it's an obligation to this county. Now, that doesn't come without expense and or time commitment. And if there are 70 of these, I don't know that there's going to be 70 different communities that are going to want to address this in a more proactive fashion. But I don't think it's just say, well, if you want to amend it, we can do it, but get your pocketbook out, and guess what? We're going to go through a CEQA consideration on this, because this law doesn't exempt MPAs and SPAs, those land use entitlements and or overlays doesn't exempt them. So I think we need to get some thought to that, Chris, and I would put it before this board, because obviously it's a decision we'll make, because it will be we're going to have to absorb that if we choose to do that. It can't be a planning department, and many of these were initiated by the planning department at the time over the course of decades and have been adopted into zoning ordinances. So if we're going to look at that, then I would think that your package needs to come back to us with that discussion, obviously going through the county executive for an analysis of what that might entail as far as staff work and costs and so forth. But I don't believe that the neighborhoods in the communities that have lived under those code requirements should necessarily bear the cost of putting in those objective standards that comport with SB 9. And then lastly, I would just say that on the noticing, I think certainly notice to the CPACs, and I would go as far as noticing adjacent property owners. Again, it will be an explanation of what the law is, of what's provided for, and the fact that it's a ministerial action. But it also then defines what, if there are concerns that fall within the umbrella of the planning director's authority under this law, that there is an appeal process, but not to mislead or misguide folks as it relates to, the practicalities of that. So that would be something, obviously, working with council and with the planning department. But I think it's important because, again, if we're going to go forward, and we are, then I think, again, keeping the folks that we immediately represent in this county apprised of how we're going to implement this is important. That's part of the effort to inform and to make it known that this is the law, this is how we're going to implement it, and it's going to be, administered fairly, but there's not a lot of opportunities to appeal beyond the objective standards that's been talked about here today. So I would suggest that we provide for, as we would with any parcel map, a notice to folks with clarity regarding what is being requested and how it will be applied, and who to contact in the event that they have questions. So.
Thank you, Supervisor Natoli.
Thanks.
I also want to ask if we are going to move forward with the idea of increasing the maximum size of ADUs. I know we are working on some standard stick-built ADU plans so that people can save money on their permitting. If we can, I don't know if it's if this is a timely thing. I think we went out for an RFP, and there was one person who responded, and they are working on those standard plans right as we speak. So can we make them aware that, because we don't want our standard plans to be less than the max. And we want at least one that's the max anyway, I think.
Sure, I'll check into that.
Okay.
Just to make sure that I'm clear on the direction that was provided regarding the noticing, we talked about a couple of different options, one being that would track with our short-term rental permits, where we provide notice to, you had mentioned, Supervisor Natoli, adjacent property owners. For short-term rentals, we notice property owners within 300 feet of the subject site. Sure. So wondering if that is tracking with the recommendation, as well as the notification is provided at the time of approval of the application. And so I want to make sure that I'm clear as we adjust our procedures, that we're clear about the point of notification being either at application being filed or at the time of approval, which is how we handle short-term rental permits, is at the point of approval.
Okay, I guess I would respond, Madam Chair, just, and maybe others want to weigh in too, but it would seem to me that with parcel maps, we would give notice early on. This is an expedited processing of that. This is different than the short-term rentals. This is creation of additional units for which use will be obviously dwellings. And I guess I would provide early notice. That would be my preference, that, not as you do in short-term rentals, but once the, approval's been given, and then you got X amount of days, assuming you get the mail on time and so forth, to, if you want to exercise some appeal or, if nothing else, to have that notice. Parcel maps are processed in a way that provides, we use 500 foot for parcel maps, is that right?
That is correct.
And this is a parcel map. So I guess I would fall back to the way we apply that versus the way you're doing the short-term rentals. That would be my preference. I don't know what the majority of the board feels.
I agree with that. Okay. That would be my preference as well.
Okay.
So did you have some more, Supervisor Desmond? Well, I just want to ask a question regarding this, though, on noticing the CPAC and the neighbors. Regardless whether we notice them or not, the law with SB 9 is going to prevail, and so there would not be an appeal opportunity if neighbors did not like it, and it would not be. It would be more like a notice or a workshop through the CPAC, but there would not be recourse or an appeal process, because the law would provide it would be a property rights issue if it came back to us and someone spent whatever the money is to appeal it. Do you understand what I'm saying? Are we creating, if we're going to notice it, we may want to let people know that, because if they get really upset about someone doing something in their neighborhood, but there is no recourse, they should know up front there's not recourse.
And that's why, as I mentioned, the short-term rental, at the initial implementation of the short-term rental permits, we were noticing at the time that an application or a permit was requested. And because we got into a lot of those questions from the public about their concerns about the permit and wanting to appeal the permit, we moved to noticing after it had been approved. In this case, there would not be a CPAC workshop. It would just be a notification to the CPAC that an application had been filed. If there was an appeal filed, and if there can be an appeal, but it would be very limited in terms of our application, or either the application of SB 9 requirements to the project, or perhaps a condition that's applied. And again, the conditions that are applied are very limited under SB 9. But if there was a contested condition from an applicant, that could be subject to an appeal. But it would be, as I mentioned, a very limited appeal type process, and it would not make its way to the board. It would stop at the Board of Zoning Appeals.
So can we send out an announcement to all the CPACs as relates to what you just stated so that they know what's coming when it comes?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mentioned that we are going to be doing a series of meetings with the CPACs beginning in January, early January, to inform them about the new process for these requests.
Okay. Do we need to vote on this, or do you just need direction? You need to vote?
Yes.
Yes, we would need to vote on the introduction of the
Ordinance. All right.
Madam
Do we
Chair?
have a motion? Yes.
I want to just ask to the point, because there's been some conversation here that, and I think Chris was seeking some guidance, and we can embed it in the motion if that's what we choose to do. But, kind of after the fact, to me, short-term rental is, certainly has implications. And I know you've got, I think there's a pending appeal, at least there was one. I heard from a resident in Supervisor Desmond's district that they were concerned about that. But in this case, to your point, Madam Chair, and I think, making it clear in the early notice, so people can ask their questions, and it may, result in certainly some frustrations. But I think rather than saying, well, there it is, the county just approves stuff and then tells us after the fact, and, the clock's ticking if, in fact, they were, moved to try to file an appeal, which I think will be very rare. So I would go back to, I think it needs to be early notice. And again, that way if there's some feedback and it fits within the parameters of what we're allowed to administer, that can be useful or helpful. Again, not all the good ideas come from this dais or from, professional staff. There's some folks a lot of times that are thoughtful, and they may work with their neighbors and so forth that could get, but once something's been approved, and that pretty much fixes not just the parcel map, but obviously the proposal for where the building envelopes and the objective standards have been mentioned many times here this morning. So I would suggest that might be a little more rigorous, but I think it could be helpful in trying to work our way through this with neighborhoods, but certainly property owners' desire to pursue this. So
I'm a little confused now because Supervisor Natoli, you're talking about early notice, which I totally concur with. I'm under the impression from council and from Mr. Pahuli that this is going to, there won't be CEQA, there will be set standards, there won't be a process at the CPAC, so early notice would not, there wouldn't be a review of the project and
no, that's true.
Comments, so.
But they can inquire. There'll be information that this is being proposed.
Okay.
They may engage one of us or all of us in that conversation, and we'll be the messengers. That's part of our responsibility. Right. But it will allow potentially for some dialogue within the neighborhood framework if people choose to do that. But again, it's not guided by us in the sense, to your point, I'm not suggesting we set forth a process that has CPAC review, but notice to the CPAC and to the neighbors, and then
it's coming, not after it's. You're saying you want notice before it happens, not after.
That's my take on it. Others may see it differently, but that's the way I see it.
I see it that way, and if you want to embed that in a motion, Supervisor Natoli, I'd certainly support it.
And I don't mean to belabor the issue, but just so that I'm clear on direction, the notice to the CPACs would be a written notice. It would not be an informational item at the CPACs, but it would be a notice to the CPACs similar to what we're going to send out to the adjacent property owners within 500 feet of the subject site.
So it would be up to the CPAC to agendize that and mention it, or just would be a public record that people would? It would just be if they're watching the public record, they'll see it.
No, they could. I would just say, I guess they could request to have a presentation, or an informational packet. You're going to send out a notice. There's going to be an application, and it's being processed ministerially. So maybe a little challenging to navigate. But I guess if they ask to at least have the item for discussion, it's not an advisory matter that they're going to be able to. There's no process to apply it to.
I don't know if that does anything, though. It's if there's no recourse, it just creates
I think if they want to do that, education for the residents who are affected by this, that does have benefit. And there were a lot of times when I was on a CPAC, just knowing about something before it happens is important to them, especially something new. But again, maybe they would have to be proactive in requesting maybe planning staff come and give a presentation, maybe educate folks about why this is happening.
I think it's certainly in the early days of this, it's going to be more critical, well, maybe ongoing as well. So.
Okay. Are we clear on the motion, Chris?
Yes.
Okay. So I believe Supervisor Natoli made the motion with the changes, notice to CPAC and neighbors.
Right, and moving the introduction of the ordinances, first reading, and then with the understanding you're going to be returning to us with a more comprehensive package. And lastly, I would just say that, a discussion relative to the neighborhood preservation and its special planning area applications and how we might handle that going forward as well. So, okay, that's my motion.
Thank you, Supervisor Natoli, and Chair will second. And please vote.
Unanimous vote with those members present.
Thank you. Next item, please.
Item number 3 is to adopt a resolution improving the groundwater sustainability plans for the Cosumnes, Solano, and South American subbasin.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Carrie.
Happy holidays. I have a presentation that should come up.
I'm sorry, they're switching the presentations in the back. So.
No worries. So my name is Carrie Schmitz. I'm with the Department of Water Resources. I'm here today to ask your board to adopt groundwater sustainability plans for our county groundwater sustainability areas. Linda Dorn was originally supposed to do this presentation. She's not able to make it today, but she is on the phone in case there are any questions of a technical nature that I can't answer. So I don't want to go into great detail about the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. You all are very well versed in it by this point. The legislation was implemented in 2015, creating or empowering local agencies to form groundwater sustainability agencies, or GSAs, in order to manage groundwater sustainably. So the GSAs have until 2042 to demonstrate sustainable management in the basins. The county is the presumptive manager if the county decides to accept that responsibility, which your board did in 2017. So you are a GSA for several areas in the county. Failure to comply results in the State Water Resources Control Board intervention. And SGMA requires that GSAs in each basin adopt the Groundwater Sustainability Plan, or GSP, prior to submittal to the state in January of 2022. And this is why we're here today. So a groundwater sustainability plan is it's a technical regulatory document that really lays out the characteristics of groundwater basins and lays out a plan for how to manage the basin sustainably. It contains identification of undesirable results. Undesirable results are listed on the slide: lowering groundwater levels, reduction of storage, seawater intrusion, degraded water quality, land subsidence, and surface water depletion. The GSP also contains a technical analysis of groundwater conditions in the basin. It identifies any projects or management actions that might be required to bring the basin into sustainability. And it requires a description of funding and also governance to implement the GSP. So the GSPs lay out a 20-year timeline to bring the basin into sustainability. So you've seen this timeline before. It's just the yellow circle just kind of shows you where we are. We are at the point where we're adopting the groundwater sustainability plans for the various basins. You'll see that we're submitting them January 31st, 2022, and beyond that is implementation. And a fun note, implementation starts right away. The first annual report is due in April following the January submittal of the GSP. So this is just a map showing the various GSAs within Sacramento County. There are 4 groundwater basins, and I'll just highlight the blue areas because those are the county GSA areas. We have management responsibility in a little bit in the South American subbasin, in the Cosumnes subbasin, and in the Solano subbasin. So the next few slides highlight just little snippets, information about each of the GSPs that we're asking you to adopt today. In the Cosumnes GSP, the Slough House Resource Conservation District GSA has stepped up to be the plan manager. The governance is laid out in the Cosumnes Groundwater Authority, JPA, which has been passed, and we've actually had 2 meetings of the Cosumnes Groundwater Authority, and Supervisor Natoli, thank you for your participation in those. Groundwater conditions in the basin, there's a little bit of a challenge. Currently, overdraft is about 2,700 acre-feet per year, and if you factor in climate change, the overdraft is about 10,000 acre-feet per year. So in the Cosumnes, we have some work to do. The GSAs have some work to do. The projects identified in the plan include voluntary fallowing, increased subsurface flows from the Harvest Water Project, and there's some partnership opportunities regarding groundwater banking with SafeCap. Implementation funding comes from groundwater fees that were passed by the GSAs in 2021. And the GSPs must be approved by each GSA board, as I mentioned. The Solano GSP, the plan manager will be the Solano GSA. Governance is being developed as we speak. They're looking at an MOU. Groundwater conditions are better in the Solano Basin. They have a groundwater surplus of about 1,000 acre-feet per year, and that decreases slightly when you consider climate change. The projects there, the plan has identified some projects, but given groundwater conditions in the basin, they don't foresee having to implement any projects unless conditions worsen. And the fee program is being developed right now. And in the South American GSP, Sacramento Central Groundwater Authority, or SCGA, is stepping up to be the plan manager. There's an MOU that's being developed now. Groundwater conditions in the basin, there's about a 1,000 acre-feet per year overdraft condition, and with climate change, that goes to about 6,000 acre-feet per year of overdraft. The projects in the basin include demand management. The Harvest Water Program certainly has a positive impact if that project moves forward. Enhanced conjunctive use among the water purveyors in the basin, which includes SCWA, and a recharge project by Omochumni-Hartnell Water District along the Cosumnes River. Implementation funding comes from fees that have been adopted by a number of the GSAs. There are a few GSAs that still need to develop their funding mechanism. So there were a number of public review and public notice steps that were required in SGMA. They're listed on this slide. Those all were met. Those requirements were met. And all of this needed to be done prior to the January 31st submittal date. So this slide just kind of lays out what happens after you submit the GSP to State Department of Water Resources. Best solution, best outcome is it's approved by the state. They can ask you to tweak it, make minor changes, and then you move forward with implementation. The state can also determine that the GSP is incomplete. And if that is the case, they issue direction to modify the GSP. You get 180 days to respond to that, and then it is reviewed again by DWR. They either determine that your deficiencies are corrected or not corrected, and then you head down the approved or inadequate path. If it's determined inadequate, then Department of Water Resources and State Water Resources Control Board get together and figure out next steps. It could lead to State Water Resources Control Board intervention, which hopefully none of the GSPs that we're considering today will end up there. So today's recommended action is for the County Board of Supervisors and the Sacramento County Water Agency Board of Directors, jointly acting as the governing body for the Sacramento County Groundwater Sustainability Agency, adopt the resolution approving the groundwater sustainability plans for the Cosumnes, Solano, and South American subbasins prior to submittal to State Department of Water Resources. So I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. I do want to just, while I'm up here, and I would like to acknowledge that this is a pretty significant milestone for the county and for everybody that's been involved in groundwater for the past 6 years. It's been 6 years. So I really want to acknowledge all of the GSAs within the county. They all stepped up and have done a great job implementing this program. It's not easy. We've had excellent technical consultants and resources along the way. We've had great facilitation help. We've had great public outreach help because public outreach is so important in this process. We've also had fantastic input from the public. And those folks who actually donated their time and sat through groundwater meetings and participated in development of the GSP have made the GSPs better. So we're grateful to them. The Water Forum, State DWR all really helped. State grants funded the majority of this work, and we wouldn't have been able to do it without the state. I'd also like to thank county staff. Linda Dorn and Daryl Eck have been rock stars for me in this process. And EMD, County Council, we all figured out Sigma together, so very grateful for their work. And I'd like to thank your board for the work, the policy direction, the hard decisions that you've had to make, I think have helped us get where we are today. So thank you very much. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Carrie. And Supervisor Natoli has questions.
Yeah, not so much questions, just comments I would add to the list of thank yous, certainly to Carrie Schmitz, obviously is doing the presentation today, and certainly Michael Peterson, and she mentioned Linda Dorn and Daryl Eck, and there's been any number of folks that have worked on this, but I know you've dedicated a good deal of your professional working days and nights to this effort, Carrie, so thank you for your engagement and involvement and work, and certainly Michael and Linda, I know, have been part of that, and Daryl and his role as well, and other members of the Water Resources staff. And as Carrie said, certainly we've been at this now into the 6th year, and there have been some friction along the way, some tough issues to take on, but I think what we have before us today, obviously, I know that when we had a workshop back in 2015-16, this member expressed concern that that timeline was short, and how were we going to do this, and funding was a question, and certainly thankful that we were able to receive the state grants, and again, we took the lead, the county, and working with our partners to pull that money down, and obviously put some additional funding in from the county, and working with the Water Forum. So a lot of a good solid work. I think it positions us well, and hopefully that, as you showed in that chart, that we will receive the appreciation and hopefully the acceptance and approval of our respective plans as we go forward with the submittal to the state. And again, I know that they've tracked this work and have been involved at different levels. But again, a tremendous amount of leadership by the County Water Resources team. So thank you so much. And I would just ask very quickly, we have the governance structure in place for the Kissimmee Subbasin. There is a governance structure for South America, and it's been talked about, obviously, maybe how that might be reconfigured. But with the Solano, we were talking about an MOU, so how is the county to be represented? Because you have a good segment of the southern part of the Delta that's in the county GSA as a part of the Solano Subbasin, and I think the good news there is that it looks like the overdraft is non-existent currently, and even with climate change, it might be minimal. In fact, part of the challenges there is not so much the groundwater, is that this is the surface water that is ever present in our riverine system, and certainly streams and rivers that constitute at least the Sacramento County portion of the Delta. So when will we see the governance on that? Because I think that representation, to the point you made, local engagement, the representation is important. So when will we see that guidance?
And I can't give you a date.
Okay.
But it is being worked on now. We're negotiating, voting, and talking about the fee program. So there's a lot of work going on right now. I would imagine that in the spring, early spring, we'll have something before this board.
Okay, so you'll come back to this board relative to our participation ongoing in representation there. And then lastly, just to the fees. In a lot of cases, those fees were adopted for 1 year, and provide some revenue source that will, certainly provide resources for the work that's ongoing. And as Carrie said, the implementation will become almost immediate. But this whole issue as it relates to fees and how they're fairly applied and under what process we would consider doing that, certainly for the county GSA, but for all the GSAs, there's a good body of work that still lies ahead. And it was evident even yesterday at the discussion at the Kissimmee Subbasin governing body, JPA. So, but with that, I would just, again, express thanks. Thank you, Carrie, and certainly Michael and both in the audience. Thank you, Linda, on the phone. I know Linda's been integral to a lot of this, and took a lot of work to get here. There's a lot of work that lies ahead, but you made it on time and certainly within budget, and those are high kudos for any project that we take on. So, again, thank you so much. So I would move the item unless I don't know if there's public comment, Madam Chair, so if you want any public comment, but I'm prepared to move the item when we're ready.
We do not have public comment on this item, and I did hear a second from Supervisor Kennedy, and I want to thank you, Carrie and Linda, and everyone for all the work on this over time. It seemed insurmountable at the time, but we're here, so this is great. Please vote.
Unanimous vote with those members present.
Thank you. Next item, please.
Item number 4 is a public hearing to authorize participation by the Sacramento County Water Agency in the California Municipal Finance Authority's Bond Opportunities for Land Development Program and the California Statewide Community Development Authority's Statewide Community Infrastructure Program for community facility districts and related items.
Good morning. Michael Peterson, Director of Water Resources. What we're asking for you today is to authorize the agency to participate in these two state programs for financing new infrastructure with development, the BOLD program, and to modify the SKIP program to allow CFDs to be included. In August, the county Board of Supervisors did authorize participation in BOLD, so we're simply following suit for the agency, in particular to allow Zone 41 water supply impact fees to be included in those programs.
Okay, great. This is exciting. I do not have any supervisors in the queue with questions, Michael, and I'm not sure if we have any public comment on this item. We do not.
We do not have any public comment for this item.
Okay, well, this seems pretty routine and pretty exciting. So do we have a motion from
Second.
Supervisor Desmond and a second by Supervisor Kennedy. Oh, I'm sorry. This time I'll open the public hearing. We do not have any public comments, so I'll close the public hearing. And we have a motion for approval by Supervisor Desmond, a second by Supervisor Kennedy. Please vote.
Unanimous vote with those members present.
Next item, please.
Item number 5 is the award of contract 4520 Poppy Ridge Groundwater Treatment Plant Phase 2 project in the amount of $6,395,930 to Anvil Builders, Inc.
Good morning, still, barely. My name is David Bolin. I'm the manager of the design section for the Department of Water Resources. And we're here to present our recommendation regarding the contract number 4520 Poppy Ridge Groundwater Treatment Plant Phase 2 project award. First off, I need to apologize to the board. On an oversight that I had regarding some protest letters from Myers and Sons LLC. Attachment 4 of the board letter had protest letters from other bidders, but I overlooked including theirs. Those have been provided to the board.
We
so
don't have
you'll
sound all
copies
of a
it.
sudden.
Hello?
If you could speak into the two microphones. Thank you.
I think it went off on you. I don't know, though.
Testing?
Yeah, I think you're back.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll step back. So I needed to apologize to the board on the oversight of not including Myers and Sons 2 letters in attachment 4. That was my mistake. So those letters were received by the department. They were reviewed with us and County Counsel, Bill Burke here. So they were taken into account when we made our recommendation determination. It was just omitted in the board letter attachment. So we're presenting this item to you today to seek your approval to award the contract for the Poppy Ridge Groundwater Treatment Plant Phase 2 project. The project will upgrade the plant and equip 2 off-site wells. The new wells will allow SCWA to support demand for recent and anticipated development, to strengthen its drought resiliency and improve operational flexibility. It's critical for SCWA to equip these wells now to prepare for another possible drought year that will certainly strain SCWA's groundwater supply system. On October 14th, 2021, we received 6 bids for the project, with Myers and Sons LLC being the apparent low bidder. We received several bid protest letters from the bidders, which are included in the aforementioned attachment 4. After extensive review with County Counsel and County Contracts section, SCWA determined the low bid from Myers and Sons LLC was non-responsive, and the second low bid from Anvil Builders Incorporated was the lowest responsible bid. SCWA opted to pursue awarding the bid to Anvil Builders rather than going down the option of rejecting and rebid due to concerns about the likely cost increase from going out to bid again and the certain schedule impacts that will occur that would prevent us from having any wells online this summer with our concerns about the upcoming likely drought conditions. So as a result, SCWA is recommending that the board take the following 2 actions. Action item 1 is accept and award the lowest responsible bid from Anvil Builders Incorporated, the base bid only, in the amount of $6,395,930 for the construction of the Poppy Ridge Groundwater Treatment Plant Phase 2 project. Recommended action item 2 is to authorize the Director of Department of Water Resources to execute a contract with Anvil Builders Incorporated in accordance with resolution number WA 2364. With that concludes my introduction and comments. Happy to answer questions you may have. We also have Bill Burke here from County Counsel to answer questions as well.
Thank you, David. We do have some questions. Supervisor Natoli.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, David. And first, thank you for acknowledging the omission. I know that when we were contacted prior to the item being scheduled to be heard last week, it became apparent in trying to find the information that it wasn't included. So thank you for acknowledging that. Obviously, they're represented here today and maybe others as well. I wanted to, before we got into, obviously there's some substance here as it relates to the bid protest and discussion that we'll probably hear from some of the presenters and certainly the information included in the packet. But I want to go for a moment to the statement of the estimated project costs, which was attachment number 6. And when I look at that, the construction cost, and obviously the engineering estimate here was for, I believe it was for somewhere close to $6.4 million for the actual construction costs. Is that accurate, Dave?
Correct.
Okay. But then I see on top of that, and again, we're talking about equipping 2 wells that were drilled some years ago, and obviously will have to be fully developed with the equipment and all the pertinent structures and transmission facilities and treatment facilities. But when I look at the cost that the county is putting on top of the construction costs, I see $332,000 for engineering, $385,000 for O&M support. The equipment obviously is $850,000. $640,000 for construction inspection costs. And then under other estimated costs, I see $418,000 for consultants. I guess I need to have some explanation. Again, we've had this debate many times or discussion before this board about soft costs and so forth. How do we get to, for one, and maybe it's not for you to answer, $640,000 estimated costs for inspections? Those are county inspectors. If you did personnel years, and we got these online by the summertime, are you going to have folks there day and night? To me, that seems excessive. And then we have consultants on top of engineers at almost $750,000 or more than $750,000. Mm-hmm. So again, I don't mean to catch you by surprise, but those numbers beyond what we're going to talk about as it relates to the actual construction just seem to really jump off the page to me. So,
okay. So the construction inspection cost is approximately 10% of construction, and that's a fairly typical estimate for a project, capital project. So as far as the engineering cost and some of this O&M support, we're actually building 2 off-site wells completely out, as well as modifying the treatment plant. And the treatment plant is going to be modified in anticipation of 2 additional wells to come online with a separate project down the road as well. So some of those costs are buried into there. So we're building the entire improvements at the plant and 2 off-site wells. When we initially put this out to bid, we had a base bid that included this work, then 2 alternates, and each alternate included a off-site well as well. So this plant work covers for all 4 future wells, the 2 on the base bid and those 2 alternates. And then the other costs, such as the consultant engineers, we require assistance with electrical design, hydro-geo design, it's specialties that are outside of staff.
So $400,000 worth for 2 wells?
And the plant upgrades.
And the plant upgrades.
Correct.
And if you took the base bids with the alternates, those all came in at $10 million plus. And if I use your equation, then the construction inspection cost would have jumped to $1 million?
Likely, yes. We'd have 4 separate sites. Construction, our goal is to have 1 well online this summer. Construction will actually go through till 2023 with this base bid. Doing 2 additional wells would have added another 6 to 8 months. So it's an effective a 2-year project.
So do you assign inspectors there full time to stay there all day long watching the contract? I mean, that to me is, 10% or not, that's a lot of money for things that you spent $400,000 for consultants design. You've got $330,000 in-house engineering, coordinate this, and we're going to have someone, again, inspections are important, but you've got contractors that we're going to talk about qualifications and so forth to spend $1 million for what's being in this overall package, but $640,000. I guess I need to understand, how do you assign those costs? I mean, unless you have inspectors on those sites that stand, I guess, shoulder to shoulder while the contractors are doing the work, and you're going to do it all in a short amount of time. That's the other thing. You talk about 2023 for the entire project. I guess I'm having a hard time accepting that number, whether it's standard or not. I mean, again, you're going to, because you're not taking the base bids. I mean, you're not taking alternates in anyway. You're going to do the base.
Correct.
And that's still $640,000.
Correct. And Again, that's our estimate based on past experience for construction is a 10% cost estimate for inspection is about on par for what we encounter. This is a very detailed project. They will not be there 24 hours a day, but getting the one well on by 2023, that's our push there.
Yeah.
The whole job's going to actually go for over a year.
But again, this doesn't accommodate the whole project, or at least I guess it does for the base bid.
Correct.
But you've spent money up front to design it properly, to have the complexity of this done in a way that obviously the bid package reflects the work. Mm-hmm. You have a host of contractors that meet the the qualifications, and obviously we're going to talk about what we do with that. I just maybe turn to Ann and David. To me, this number really comes off the page to me for what's being encountered here, particularly when we've spent $750,000 engineering and design consultants, and then we're going to spend twice, a similar amount, near the comparable amount, just to have folks stand by to make sure the work's done by qualified contractors. That just it seems to be getting way out of bounds for what we're being asked to do here. We're not building a whole new transmission system. You're going to adapt the plant. I see Michael's come up here. I'm having a hard time with this number, Michael. I really am.
No, I understand that. Yeah. And as David said, that is the estimate. That is the estimate based on what we actually see with prior projects. What we would not want to do is underestimate those soft costs and sort of understate what they might be. We're trying to be as accurate as possible in projecting those costs. Again, it is based on the costs that we find for inspection for actual projects we've taken through the construction process with inspection, with design, and that is the best thing we can put forward. And we don't. It's not a budget that they say, hey, go spend $640,000 for inspection, but we have to account for that in our budgeting process because that is a realistic estimate for that section of the soft costs.
Could you help me understand what the personnel assignment would be to get to $640,000?
That I don't know what for this project, if it would be 3 senior inspectors and 2 field inspectors and 1 principal. I don't have that specific breakdown, but this is again part of how we're doing this is to estimate that piece of cost. There may be some variation from one project to the next, but other than artificially lowering that estimate and then trying to restrict the inspection staff, that's going to compromise the project execution. So we have to make sure that we're providing in our overall budget the ability to pay for that cost. Again, each project is different, but this is not based on anything that we haven't seen. Actual projects come through. 10% is the appropriate factor to assume for those costs. Now we can ask for an estimate from CMID.
Yeah, I think
like
it's
that.
important. Again,
Sure.
Because again, we already have wells that are drilled. You have to equip them, develop them. You got a complex project. If you talk with the contractors, but we spent a lot of money in advance to address those things, and you have qualified contractors bidding the project. We have to oversee that, but $650,000 to do that. And that's only for a portion of the work, not for everything that's been talked about here in David's. We'd be talking about $1 million of inspection costs if you had the alternates in here. That just that seems excessive to me. Again, I get it. Maybe that's the number you use. You're saying that's what you would allow for in the budget. I guess I'd like to see how people would comport to put that work together as a part of this project, particularly on the timeline. If this compressed timeline you're working with, to get that many personnel hours assigned to the project, you're not asking contractors to work 24/7 on this project, to David's point. It just, it seems like a lot of money chewed up on soft costs in that particular category. And so I appreciate you trying to address it, but I for one, am still not satisfied as it relates to that particular item. And again, I don't want to take away from the conversation we're going to have here about who might do the work, because I got to get to that point first. But I am really concerned that on this we get nearly $3 million in soft costs.
Okay, well, we can provide some information from CMID on it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks. Those are my questions right now. We'll have some presentations. I want to talk about some of the issues that we've seen in some of the correspondence, but.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. Did you have something? Okay. Okay. At this time, I do not. Was your presentation completed?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
Thank you. We do have some public comment in chambers, so we'll take public comment at this time and then come back for deliberation. So at this time, I'm calling Christopher Kolke. I think there's a button on the side if you want to. Oh, actually, I think you're the right height for that. So
Perfect.
Oh, thank you.
Fantastic. So my name is Chris Kolke. I'm an attorney at Downey Brand. I'm counsel for Myers & Sons, and I'm here with C.C. Myers, who's here today. He's the founder of Myers & Sons, and I'm obviously here to speak about Contract 4520 and ask that it be awarded to Myers & Sons. Now, Myers has an outstanding resume of experience and a track record of great work in the industry. It's known for timely completing projects and on time. Unlike Anvil, which is the tentative awardee of this contract, which is based in San Francisco, Myers & Sons is based right here in Sacramento. To give an example of something that Myers & Sons has worked on before, contract number 4394, that's the Winding Way Bridge, Chicago Creek Bridge Replacement Project. I believe it was on the agenda last week. I think it was number 13. Myers & Sons worked with the county cooperatively to complete that project. So it does have experience, of course, with the county completing projects. Now, Myers was the lowest responsive bidder, and it can perform this work for $300,000 cheaper, more than that, in fact, than the tentative awardee, Anvil. And we respect County Council's decision to award the contract to Anvil, but there was one reason pointed out in the agenda for why Myers & Sons should not receive the contract, and that was because Myers did not list the subcontractor percentages in the bid document. And so I want to speak a little bit about that and whether or not it's material, and it's our position that it's not material, that Myers & Sons was not required to do that. I wouldn't be up here challenging this decision today unless I believed a contract award to Myers could be defended, and it would be defended by Myers. We, Downey Brand, have defended challenges in the past. We don't anticipate one here, but we could defend one if it came to that. Now, the bid instructions did not require that Myers & Sons list the bid percentages. It just said that Myers shall, is the word that was used, list the name, location of the place of business, CSLB number, type of work each subcontractor would perform, and the DIR registration number. Myers & Sons complied with all of these instructions. The bid form, however, had a line for the bid percentages, but the bid instructions themselves didn't require that this be filled out. So strictly speaking, there was no irregularity in the bid. Now, putting that aside, the county can waive minor irregularities. We certainly don't want to be in a position, of course, and this is why the law is the way it is, where losing bidders can comb through bids and find some minor technicality in an attempt to be able to achieve the award. That obviously wouldn't serve the county, it wouldn't serve the public, especially here where we have a contract that can be done for over $300,000 less than Anvil can do it, as stated in its bid. Now, the agenda stated that this alleged irregularity could not be waived because it was material, since Myers could have withdrawn its bid based on it. But that assumes Myers' failure to include the percentages was material. The bid instructions, as discussed, didn't require that they be listed. And to determine materiality, the question really must be asked, what impact did the omitted percentages actually have? None. It didn't affect the bid price. It didn't affect the work that would get the fact that great work would get performed. I think that the requirement that the lists that the percentages be listed in the bid really, I would surmise, derives from the Subletting and Subcontracting Fair Practices Act, which requires that subcontractors be listed who are performing in excess of 0.5% of the total bid amount. Myers, of course, disclose all the subcontractors who fit within that category. So it really served its purpose by listing those subcontractors, which itself was an implication that those subcontractors were performing at least 0.5% of the total bid amount. So again, I want to say we respect County Council's decision in the agenda, but an award to Myers, a local company founded here in Sacramento, would be over $300,000 less for the same work. And again, I'm very confident an award to Myers could be defended if it came to that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. I wonder if, David, if there's someone here who can speak to the how the review process took place and.
We have Bill Burke here who represents the Water Agency and will respond.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Burke.
Hello, Bill Burke, Deputy County Counsel. I assisted DWR in reviewing this bid process. So in your agenda materials, you should have a copy of what's shown on the screen right now. That is Myers & Sons. It's a one page out of Myers bid submission. That is the subcontractor listing. And I'll start off by saying that the county's standard construction specifications require expressly that bidders submit information regarding the portion of work that their subs are going to do for each work item. That's one place where the requirement is expressly stated. And of course, all of our bidders are expected to be familiar with our standard specs. So this is our standard form for subcontractors. It's got a number of columns. You identify the subcontractor, you identify the work item, and you can see here it's the second column from the left. That is the column to list the percentage of work that the sub is going to do. And as you can see here on Myers' form, it's blank on the first, I think, 6 rows until the last one, where it says the sub will do, well, the number 100 is listed there. And then there's one more row on the next page where it's also, they filled it in with the number 100. So that's a non-responsive bid. That's an omission. The information that's requested, it isn't there. One thing that Myers Council neglected to mention when reading off the instructions on that form is that it does ask for the portion of work that the sub is going to do. So every other bidder provided this information. I would also state that it's a form, it's intuitive, or I think fairly clear that there is a column with a heading on top that requests certain information. I don't think it's too hard to understand that there's something required to be there. So we have these omissions in the information, this blank form or partially blank form. There's the number 100 at the bottom. Staff and I looked at that, tried to figure out what it might mean. Was it a reference to if you combined all of the work items, it's 100% of the job? We don't know. And we're not required to figure out what that means, and you're not required to figure out what that means. It's non-responsive, and you have every right to reject that bid on that basis. That should be the end of it. The only reason you would go further is to consider whether or not you'd want to waive that omission, waive that error, that irregularity in the bid, and accept this bid. And then that gets you into an analysis of whether or not you can do that. You can't waive any irregularity. State law is pretty clear that you can't waive an irregularity where to do so would give the bidder an unfair competitive advantage. And the courts tell us that a bidder does get an unfair competitive advantage if they are able to withdraw their bid without forfeiting their bid bond. We've got a case out of our 3rd District Court of Appeal here called Valley Crest Landscape versus City of Davis, which establishes the general rule that where a contractor, where a bidder changes the information about their subcontractor percentages, at that point that would allow them to withdraw their bid and give them that unfair competitive advantage. And when that happens, the awarding body can't waive that error. So let me talk about what happened after this. We're required by law, when there is a non-responsive bid, we have to notify the bidder that they were non-responsive and allow them to submit materials on the issue of non-responsiveness. What that basically means is they have to explain to the awarding body what that information means if the awarding body is going to consider waiving the error. So what we got was another form, a corrected form that filled in all the blanks, and it changed the subcontractor percentage on that bottom line and the next line. It wasn't 100%. It was much less, something in the 10 to 20% range. And that creates a problem for you, for the county, for us, because we've got this case out there that says when the bidder changes their subcontractor percentages, we can't waive the irregularity. So there's that. I don't think you want to get involved in that. You don't have to get involved in that at all. There's no obligation for you to waive the irregularity. The simple way forward is to find that it's non-responsive and award to the second low bidder.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Natoli.
Thank you, Bill. So in addition to what you just described, we've also in the attachments, again, I can't recall, at least in recent memory, where we've actually had this kind of chain reaction of the subsequent bidder in the lineup protesting the award for everyone that was ahead of them, at least on the price piece of this. And we've got 4 letters of communication. Obviously, Myers is represented here today, but we have Clark Brothers, Mountain Cascade, and Anvil, all arguing. Obviously, Anvil is recommended by staff, taking your analysis and obviously water resources analysis. But I'm curious about what about the other submittals that then protest the award to Anvil and that then would also protest the award to the third low bidder and challenging the responsiveness and or aspects of their bid forms. I trust you looked at all those as well.
Okay. I did. Yeah, and the critiques that were made regarding Anvil's bid, one was the allegation that Anvil's bid was unbalanced, which basically means weighted towards the alternates. I discussed that with staff because they have a better sense of the project costs. They did not feel that the pricing of the alternates compared to the base bid by Anvil was unbalanced. And in any event, what they're asking you to do is only award the base bid and not award the alternates. So it's a bit of a moot point. There was another allegation regarding Anvil, the same allegation that Anvil didn't fill in the subcontractor percentages. Mm-hmm. I think what that other contractor was seeing was that there's some information crossed out in Anvil's form and this subcontractor form, and there's a couple of lines that they didn't need to use because they crossed out one of the rows. But if you look at it closely, there is a percentage provided for each subcontractor listed. Okay. And I think those were the two, the two arguments made about Anvil's bid. I reviewed the protest, I looked at Anvil's bid, and I found that it was, that it's okay.
Okay. So just a point, I mean, I don't know that it was pointed out, but this isn't the first time, obviously, we've had protests before this county, and we have to weigh the option. But we always reserve the right to reject all bids and then to go back out. Again, there are implications to that. Certainly, staff spoke to it relative time and obviously some urgency. But we have that ability today. If in sorting through all this, we chose not to support the recommendation as outlined, we have the ability to reject bids and to rebid it. Is that correct?
Legally, yes. And you may get another round of bids that have issues, and we'll be right back here again.
I get that, and price, adjustments and so forth. But I wanted to be sure, because I know that's been pointed out many times in the past, that it doesn't come without implications, and to your point, could result in another series of protests. But okay, thanks. That's the questions I had.
Thank you, Supervisor Natoli. Supervisor Desmond.
Thanks, Bill, and I don't know, should I address this too? I mean, so first of all, I'm just curious, why did we decide not to look at the base bid plus the alternates? Why did we ultimately make that decision, just to rely on awarding the bid based on the base bid? And excuse my ignorance, just because I'm not as familiar with the project, obviously, as Supervisor Natoli.
David Bolin again. So we, through our consultants, had received information that bids were skyrocketing with all of the pandemic issues going on, material shortages and whatnot. So we tried to couch the bid in a way that what we were hearing is we could get a bid that was on the magnitude of double our estimate. So we decided to split it up so that it would give us the opportunity that we wanted to build 4 wells and the improvements. If bids came in incredibly high, we wanted to have a way to still do some of the work if we could be okay with those costs. So we opted to do a base bid that were 2 wells and then 2 alternates, which were a new well on each alternate. So it was a way to give ourselves some flexibility in awarding it and trying to insulate ourselves from potentially high bids coming in.
Price increases next year. I mean, it just kind of strikes me that you're kind of taking more of a risk if you're going to wait and try to bid out for those final 2 wells next year as we see prices continuing to escalate. So I was just curious about that, because certainly if you look at the amounts of the base bid plus the alternates, the prospective awardee is the second highest, actually. I just had that question. So thank you, David. I appreciate you answering that. And the other thing is, I was also struck by, it looks like you have 4 of the 6 bidders, maybe 3 of the 6, protesting the bid award against it for various reasons. Is that typical in a bid like this or a process like this?
No.
This is unusual.
This is unusual, but I would say it's becoming maybe a little more regular. We have another project that opened that's going to be January 11th, I believe, with some items. So I don't know if the climate's just changing with the bidders, being a little more aggressive on challenging each other.
Okay.
In my experience, I have not had 3 to 4 protest letters on a bid before.
Okay. And Bill, I appreciate you taking us through kind of the legal determination, and I understand that the county appears to be on solid legal ground, but it's not, I'm still not convinced that it was necessary. My interest here is ensuring that we get the best deal for the taxpayers, and secondary to that is certainly, local companies to me are always more appealing. But yeah, I have some current concerns about this. That's why I was very intrigued by Supervisor Natoli's point about, just starting the process over. And if we did that, what would the delay be? What would the additional cost be?
The cost? We're not very confident that we would get similar bids. We believe the costs would go up. And just as importantly is it would certainly...
I mean more the administrative costs and the time delay. What would we be looking at, would you say?
4 months to 5 months of construction delay, which would certainly prevent us from having one of the wells online this summer.
Okay. Thank you.
Did you want to chime in, County Executive?
Well, I knew that Mr. Peterson had some concerns about it, and I'm assuming that they have been addressed. About the delay. About
the delay.
About the delay.
Yes. Okay. Great. And are you finished, Supervisor Desmond? Supervisor Natoli.
So part of the identified criticality here is that we've been obviously in a serious, very severe drought. It looks as though that we certainly, even with the prospects for what's going to happen in the next few days, that we're seeing some betterment in the overall picture. Groundwater doesn't change that significantly based upon year-to-year rain. So I guess I'm curious about that, because that's the justification beyond any price considerations. You said it's in the staff report, and we say strain the water agency's groundwater supply system. Can you maybe quantify that? Is it because I assume there's demand, the house building continues out there, so I see Mike Hewitt coming.
Defer here to Mike Hewitt.
Oh, Mike.
Is it afternoon?
Yep.
Getting close. Afternoon, board. And yeah, so Mike Hewitt, I'm the engineering manager at Sac County Water Agency. And there are a couple points that I think got brought up I think are important to address. So Director Natoli, we do have surface water supplies available in addition to groundwater. And what we're seeing this year is there's a there's a good chance those surface water supplies could be even less than what we had last year. And our groundwater supplies in the area as a whole is limited. And there's a lot of things that can happen that can cause a well or two to go down, and in that case we'd be in trouble. And so the timing to get the wells is very critical. And that's probably the most important thing from a staff perspective, is that we do get wells constructed for this next summer season. We did accelerate the schedule for the Poppy Ridge well and another well that you'll be seeing next month because of that. So, yeah, does that answer your question, Don?
So Michael, you've been given notice that with the Freeport Water Project, where we draw our surface water from generally for that portion of our system, that we've been given notice that we're going to have curtailment, and if so, is that hard and fast, and maybe elaborate if you could.
Yes, so we actually did get a letter recently that our CVP water supplies were going to be at the health and safety limit, which might be somewhat similar to was this last summer. It could be even drawn down a little bit more. We're not sure what that's going to amount to yet. And then our surface water rights, they get pulled from us usually in the springtime. So we go into the summertime with pretty limited surface water supplies. That's what makes the groundwater right now so important for us in having this well in place. And the second well that's going to be constructed late in the summer provides some relief there.
So when you say the health and safety, you're talking about our surface water draw from the Sacramento River?
Yes. Yes, so, the Bureau
because that
water,
was, I saw it, you get that prescriptive list that was issued by the Director of Water Resources, and health and safety is at the top of the list for water rights users, and obviously there have been curtailments, but I guess
right. So there's an MI, I don't want to go into too much depth here, but maybe I can help explain it. So there's an M&I shortage policy that the Bureau will implement, and it drops how much water that we can take from the CVP project, and that's a big source of our water supply, our surface water supply over the summer. And they've already announced that they're going to a health and safety limit numbers, which does drop how much we can use. Again, it's pretty similar to what it was last year.
So, okay, so again, you said that, so, I mean, it's impactful, and certainly provides uncertainty, but we aren't, at least from what we know today, looking at any significant drop in the surface water availability. Again, pictures can change, and, I guess if it quit raining after this week, we'd be in a very dry situation. But, the reservoirs are coming up, and for health and safety needs for M&I uses, particularly for those where, it's critical for people's, daily use, we get, as do other users in the system, get a higher priority. So if we're not looking at a significant curtailment, I mean, it's unpredictable. If you have a well, then you can run the well 24/7 if you have it. I mean, that's our conjunctive use program. But I guess I'm just trying to get a handle, because, again, I would just say that, to have this kind of domino effect of bid protests, understanding the urgency, certainly the water agency, planning for the development in large part that's occurring in the Elk Grove area, in this case in the Elk Grove area, but certainly Zone 40, 41 cover vineyard areas and other areas in the county, including Rancho Cordova. I guess I'm trying to get some sense, because as I'm weighing this and I'm concerned, I think, we've had the legal review of this. We've had, obviously, staff here, but this board's ultimately going to have to decide this. And I'm comfortable, as I said earlier, about some of the soft costs on this project, and I don't know what we're going to see on January 11th, but I guess that you guys will be prepared for me on that when it comes forward.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if it'll work this way too, but I think this board item is to approve the hard cost contract with the contractor, and the soft costs maybe is something we can follow up with you on a separate path.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Mike. So, Madam Chair, if I could, just one other question, and if I could turn to Bill, just real quickly again, Bill. So we heard from counsel for Myers. Your analysis, went to reasons why not. So am I clear in my understanding that not only your recommendation, but the board, at least in your view, is not empowered to, on this matter, because of what you've stated previously, and maybe you want to restate that in brief? We could not make, is your view, we could not make the bid award to the apparent low bidder, and obviously it's most, responsible bid. That's a part of that. I went into your analysis. So I guess for you or Krista, if you could kind of.
Well, that's right.
Yeah.
Right. You can't waive the irregularity.
Okay. So if we were concerned about price, again, we would, at some risk, not your recommendation, not staff's recommendation, we could reject all the bids and rebid it. But in this case, Amble is recommended for your analysis, obviously water resources, and that leaves us in the position where your recommendation is what we have before us. So, okay. So, I'm telling you.
Okay. We don't have further public comments. And I don't see any members of the board in the queue to speak. I always, when these RFPs go out, you always hope they come back with a clear decision. And so it makes it difficult when it doesn't.
Maybe more public comment, Madam Chair?
We do not have further public comment.
Well, I would just weigh in that, I certainly am appreciative of the staff analysis. I think it was thorough, and I appreciate both council and water resources staff. But I guess I'm not prepared to go forward with a recommendation here today. So as it stands, I would be more inclined, again, at some risk, and it might be more costly than awarding the bid, but and it throws the timeline off. I'm not so sure that the timeline couldn't be abbreviated to some degree. We've had this before on some projects where the bid packages are ready to go. There's costs associated with that. It wasn't entirely defined at the podium, but I'm not prepared to make the motion. If there are other board members that are inclined to go with the staff recommendation, but I would be of the mind that we would rebid this project.
So your motion is to go out and do a whole new RFP process?
Well, just to rebid the process, but yeah, basically to reissue the request for proposals. Yes, Patrick, that would be where I stand. But again, I'm not putting that in a form of motion because others may see it differently, but that's where I'm at.
I would support that approach also.
Okay,
So
then I would.
you want to make that
Okay, then
bid?
I would then move that we reject all bids and that we authorize the director to rebid the project.
And we have a second by Supervisor Desmond. Please vote.
Unanimous vote with those members present to reject all bids and authorize the director to rebid the project.
Okay. I want to thank the staff. I know it's hard. The bid process takes time, so hopefully we can work through it, and in the next bid process, it'll be more clear. All right, next item, please.
Your next item is item number 6, and I do have a request from the department to continue the item. It is to approve the issuance of the Sacramento County Water Financing Authority of Series 2022 revenue bonds, interim financing in a principal amount of not to exceed $95 million, and approving the forms and authorizing the execution and delivery of related documents. And the request is to continue the item to January 11, 2022.
Okay. I have a motion by Supervisor Kennedy and a second by Supervisor Desmond. Please vote.
Unanimous vote by those members present. And we did not have any public comment on that item either.
Thank you. Next item, please.
Moving on to item number 7 is a resolution supporting the submittal of grant application administered by the Sacramento San Joaquin Delta Conservancy and other funding entities by Ducks Unlimited for the Stone Lakes Restoration Project. And I do have, believe that Mr. Aaron Wills is on the phone.
Okay. Is Mr. Wills?
Not quite yet. I'm waiting for them to transfer him into the meeting.
Do you have a presentation, Michael? Okay. Does Mr. Wills have a comment?
Hello, Mr. Wills. Can you hear me? Mr. Wills?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, we can hear you, but I think I'm going to need you to speak up just a little bit.
Okay, I'll apologize. I'm outside the school picking up for early dismissal today.
So, Mr. Wills, did you wish to make a public comment about this item?
No, nothing except for thanks for taking the time on a busy agenda day to kind of potentially support the Stone Lakes Restoration Project. The project has been in front of the board before. Is essentially trying to continue the support, but lessen the administrative burden for future projects. So if you have any questions, I am certainly here to answer them.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Natoli has some comments.
Yeah, just certainly thanks to Aaron, and certainly thank you to Water Resources for moving quickly on this. We had this before us in 2017, and at that time, I remember Michael Peterson and Don Thomas scrambled to get it on a December agenda, and likewise this time because of some of the grant deadlines. But it is a worthwhile project. I appreciate the analysis by our staff and certainly recommendation. And unless you have any other public comment, I would move approval with our thanks to, and certainly the legal staff for their review of it as well. So.
Thank you. I have a second by Supervisor Kennedy. And do we have any public comment on this item?
We do not have any verbal public comments in the queue.
Okay, please vote.
And the motion carries by unanimous vote with those members present.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wills, for being here, and thank you, Michael, for being available. The next item, please.
Your next item is your nominations, item number 8. And you are continuing to January 11, 2022, the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation Citizens Advisory Committee, Vineyard Area Community Planning Advisory Council, continuing to January 25, 2022, Children's Coalition, continuing to February 9, 2022, Cemetery Advisory Commission, Developmental Disabilities Planning and Advisory Council, Rio Linda Alberta Community Planning Advisory Council, Sacramento County Mental Health Board, and the Sacramento County Youth Commission. For today's items, I have the County Service Area 4B.
I need to continue that if I could till January 11th, please.
January 11th or 25th?
January 11th. I think we have the application. I just don't have the notes here in front of me. So.
Okay, thank you. Next is In-Home Supportive Services Advisory Committee.
Please continue to January 25th.
Thank you. Public Health Advisory Board.
Continue to January 11.
Thank you. Sacramento County Bicycle Advisory Committee.
Nominate Arlete Hodel.
Okay. Thank you.
If I said that right.
And that concludes your nominations. Item number 9 is the county executive comments.
Just happy holidays, everybody.
Thank you. Happy holidays. And Supervisor Natoli, did you have comments?
Yes, I wanted to do an adjournment. Just give me 1 minute to get my notes here, Madam
And
Chair. So I'm taking the
Supervisor Desmond had some comments, so do you want him to go first? Oh, you have
Might not be brief, yeah,
Yes.
while Supervisor Natoli's getting his notes
Okay,
ready.
sure.
Just briefly, to our county exec, and I know the county put out some information recently about some of the winter respite efforts that the county is undergoing. I really appreciate that. I'm a big believer, you and I have discussed many times, that the county does a lot of great work, a lot of times does not talk about it enough. I think this is certainly a good step. I always wish we could be doing more. We all do. Can you describe a little bit, I think something I'm missing in some of the winter respite actions, and I know we're doing even more during the storm. Can you describe a little bit what the county's efforts are at some of these winter respite locations, whether it's a county-run site or a city-run site, in terms of getting folks connected with services while we have an opportunity to connect with them there?
Well, in both circumstances, we make every effort to have staff available to make sure that they get connected to services. I cannot specifically speak to the ones that just happened because I haven't received a briefing on that, on specifically what did happen, but that is our normal practice.
Okay, I appreciate it. So as a general matter, whether it's winter respite, temporary shelter, or a city-run shelter, county-run shelter, we make an effort to have county social workers there to connect folks with services that they need.
Yes, and typically when the city, I'll speak to the county, that's standard practice, and when the city opens up a shelter, they typically request some support, and when that request happens, then we absolutely offer support.
Great. Thank you very much, Ann.
Thank you. Supervisor Natoli, are you
Yes, I
ready?
am. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would ask that we would today adjourn our meeting in memory of Donald Girth, who was the longest-serving president of Cal State University of Sacramento, better known as Sac State, and I know someone that probably was known to members of this board. He spent more than 45 years in the Cal State University system and came to Sacramento State in 1984, where he was appointed to serve as president. He served until his retirement in 2003. And I would just say that during my term of service, I had the opportunity to work with President Girth on some economic development matters. I know he was a part of some of the efforts in the region, certainly to bring forth some educational focus to not only just the workforce, but also to development of opportunities, educational opportunities at the college and university level that would fit well, obviously, with some of the pursuits and some of the job opportunities that were either in our region or coming to our region. During his time as president, he, as I mentioned a moment ago, spent a lot of time focusing on, growing the certainly the opportunities at Sac State, but to I think developing the role of Sacramento State in the region as a vital economic engine, but one that obviously was relevant to many of the aspects of economic development and certainly of our community life. And I would just say that he was certainly well used in some circles, but he was a gentleman and a scholar, both literally and figuratively. And I know that devoted tremendous amount of effort to leading the university, but certainly being his leadership in the community and certainly within the CSU system. He was 93 when he passed a couple of weeks ago. Leaves behind his wife, Beverly, and throughout his life, obviously, and even in retirement, he continued to be a supporter of this community in many ways, and I think really embodied, some of the ideals about higher education, but certainly what it means to be a leader of a major university here, certainly in our community in the state. So, I just would acknowledge his community service, his public service, and ask that we adjourn in his memory today. And I don't know, maybe Supervisor Kennedy may have had a chance to. We're both graduates of CSU, Sac State, and so you might have.
I did know President Girth. And one of the things that always struck me was he was very student-centric, and that's not always the case. He wasn't just about brick and mortar, but much like President Nelson today, he was very thoughtful and cared deeply about the students, and his blood truly did run green and gold. So thank you for the adjournment.
You bet. And I just failed to acknowledge that he, in addition to his wife, he leaves behind 2 daughters and obviously a son-in-law and some grandchildren as well. So,
thank you, Supervisor Natoli. We all want to wish the family our most sincere sympathy. And so, before we close, I want to wish everyone a happy holiday season. And at this time, we'll close our meeting in memory of Mr. Donald Girth. This meeting is adjourned.